Kitty, can you manhandle cameras, and Jared, can you get in your
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and have myself here. So
I think 2.
All right, we are live.
2 is fine. 1 needs more headroom on Jared.
Yeah, I gotta go up on me here. So.
Is he coming in here to do it? Yep. Okay.
What's up?
You know, I have handled.
Oh, Ben's doing it. Okay. So.
Look at Alan for a minute. Back at me. Here.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I got kicked from chat.
Are you on, which network are you on?
Station 204.
5 gigahertz?
No.
Can you jump on 5 gigahertz?
Sure, I might need a password for that, so.
I got kicked too.
Me 3.
Everybody got kicked. All right, thank you. All right. How's it going today, Alan?
Hey, it's great, Jared. How are you?
Pretty good. Very excited to be talking with you today, so this is going to be...
Yeah, where are you? Are you in L.A.?
Yeah, we're here in L.A., so we're just in down in near Disneyland. So.
Oh, you're in Anaheim?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Well, this will be an e-ticket 20 minutes.
I hope so. Yeah, I work up at Griffith Observatory, and I got to see your talk that you did about a year ago up there,
Yeah,
and with Dr. Danley, and it was great.
Laura's awesome, and I'm going to be back in May with Dave Grinspoon on that book.
Oh, nice, excellent. Yeah, we had Dave come in like a year ago to talk about Earth in Human Hands, so now we get to get you and Dave at the same time. It's like a double dose of awesome. So
There you go. Yeah.
pretty sweet. All right, how are you guys doing over there?
Yeah, I'm sorry, ladies. All the heat is in the one.
All right.
So it is on. It's only the shop.
Hey, Jared, can you mention the new order that we're doing all this just so the internet can catch up?
Sure,
with us?
yeah. So just to kind of let the internet know, we're doing the show out of order today to kind of prioritize the time of our guests. We're going to be interviewing Dr. Alan Stern first, and then we're going to move on to Loretta, if I remember correctly, after that. And then we're going to go into news, and then we're going to do comments. So basically, we're doing the entire show out of order, but through the magic of video editing, we're going to make it look like it was in order. But we'll have to change your memory later, I guess. I guess that's how that works, right? Yeah, that's how that works.
At the beginning of the archived show, there will be a bright flash, and you'll remember nothing. Yeah.
So
Are you
that's
ready?
how the show goes every week.
Yeah.
Here, though, right? Okay, yeah.
Alan, are you ready?
I am ready.
All right, Jared, you ready?
I am ready.
Internet, let's do this.
Let's do it, Internet. And welcome back to the main part of today's TMRO episode. Now, before we get started with it, we want to give a huge shout out to our Escape Velocity citizens. These folks give us $10 or more per episode on Patreon, or $30 a month or more on makersupport.com. And we also want to give a huge shout out to our Orbital citizens as well. These folks give us $5 or more per episode on Patreon, or $15 a month or more on Maker Support. And they get a whole host of goodies that you can look at and you can see on either patreon.com/TMRO or makersupport.com/TMRO. So go over, consider. Every little bit helps us, and you are awesome because you help make this show possible. And speaking of this show today, I'm very excited because we have an incredible guest today. We're going to talk about some really cool stuff. I've got Dr. Alan Stern, the principal investigator of the New Horizons mission, your career has just been incredible with the amount of work that you've done. And we're very glad to have you on here today, Dr. Stern.
Jared, it's awesome to be here. I'm really looking forward to spending the time. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, so to just go right off of the bat, I definitely want to ask, because we all have that moment that sort of sparks our curiosity of space and sets us off on this path that we end up taking into the space industry. And I got to ask, what was that first experience that kindled your interest in space?
You know, I was a little kid growing up during Apollo, and just watching that and Star Trek and movies like 2001: A Space Odyssey, like just about everybody else my age, want to grow up and be an astronaut and fly in space. What could be better?
Excellent. Well, and you continued on that. You went to college for both aerospace engineering and planetary science, which is quite an interesting combo with those two together. And when you were in college, the Voyager mission, the twin Voyager probes, were occurring at that time, and they were kind of rewriting some of the books that you may have been reading at that time. So what was that experience like, sort of being in college while some of these things are being rewritten?
Right. Well, that was an amazing experience. And actually, NASA and the Jet Propulsion Lab, I remember during the Jupiter encounter with Voyager 1, that they were broadcasting live images as they were being downlinked from the spacecraft, and high-resolution images of the Galilean satellites like Io and Europa, and then the crazy meteorology of Jupiter coming on the screen. And I was an aerospace engineering student learning about orbital mechanics, and it just revolutionized my view of how interesting the planets could be, and kind of set me on a path towards eventually, 10 years later, doing a doctorate in astrophysics and planetary science.
Nice. So, so you were also a principal investigator on a couple payloads for the space shuttle as well. So what did those payloads entail flying on shuttle?
Well, I did two. One was called CHAMP, and one was called SWISS, and those are acronyms. And they both were ultraviolet and visible imagers to study comets, in particular Comet Hale-Bopp and Comet Halley. And they flew on a total of 4 space shuttle missions, flying in the cockpit, really downstairs as a mid-deck locker experiment that looked out through an ultraviolet window and was operated by one of the mission specialist crew members on each flight. And we got great data.
Nice. Now, I want to sort of go into sort of the meat and potatoes of the work that you've done so far. And in order to do that, we've got to sort of backtrack a little bit to the late 80s with what's now known as the Pluto Underground. And that's when that was formed. And what was the Pluto Underground all about? And what was your role in making the Pluto Underground?
Well, let me backtrack even further. After Viking, which was the first pair of Mars landers ever done, NASA did that. And after Viking, there was a long hiatus in Mars exploration, and a bunch of college students and graduate students formed an organization in the early 80s called the Mars Underground. And they became very successful in putting NASA back on the road to having an exciting program of robotic Mars exploration. They really changed the game. And now it was the end of the 80s, 1988, 89, and I was in graduate school, and we got this brilliant idea that since Voyager wasn't going any further than Neptune, wasn't going to Pluto, and the Pluto science was just exploding from ground-based telescopes, that we ought to form a group to get a mission to Pluto. And we called it, after the Mars Underground, we called it the Pluto Underground. And I helped form it, and I was a really active member in it. And that's really the genesis, the catalyst of what ultimately became New Horizons more than another 10 years later in 2001.
Yeah, and I just kind of want to let our audience know, which is that Voyager 1 actually could have gone on to Pluto, but they, if I remember correctly, they did a flyby of Titan at Saturn instead. And was that kind of a really big motivator for you guys, or was it overall just seeing the enthusiasm for Mars exploration that allowed you to sort of want to get that same enthusiasm for exploring Pluto?
It was more the latter. The people involved were a bunch of young scientists. We called ourselves the Plutophiles because we were all experts and lovers in the study of this distant little world that wasn't getting any love, any attention from a spacecraft mission. And we were energetic enough to think that if we just kept increasing our ranks and making a better and better story, well, who wouldn't want to go to Pluto? Of course, it took 12 years to convince the system to spend the money, but it worked.
So what was those 12 years like when you were trying to convince people to do that mission? Was it? I mean, 12 years. That sounds like a really long time in order to stick with sort of the same idea. You guys just really toughed it out.
It was tough, and it took a lot of persistence. Actually, what happened right in 1989 was that I got kind of put forward by the group to go up to NASA headquarters and talk to the guy that ran planetary science at the time, Jeff Briggs, and pitch him with the idea of, why don't you do a study at least of how we do a mission to Pluto? And Jeff, bless his heart, he loved that, and he initiated a study almost right away. I became one of the study scientists, and that study worked out very well. In 1990, NASA had a press conference and said, this is how you do a mission to Pluto. And NASA formed a working group to study it in more detail and made me the chairman of the working group. But by 1991, that all got canceled in favor of a different approach, and it was demoralizing. And we went off on a second approach called Mariner Mark II to Pluto. Within less than a year, that got canceled, and we started on a third approach called Pluto Fast Flyby. And even that didn't make it. And then there was Pluto Express and Pluto Kuiper Express. And it's a long, involved story, and a lot of people had to really stick with it to make it work. If we had ever given up the desire, it would have died then and there, and no one would ever know what Pluto looks like or any of the great science that turned out. And it did take a dozen years, and it took just a lot of gumption and, frankly, a lot of work and a lot of persistence. And I've got a book that's coming out with David Grinspoon called Chasing New Horizons. It's coming out May 1st, but you can order it now online. And I'll tell you what, it tells the whole story, the pretty parts and the ugly parts, the exciting parts and the demoralizing parts. And, of course, also what we learned when we got to Pluto.
Excellent. Yeah. As I've often heard said, engineering is very rarely a parade of victories as it comes along with it. So kind of to talk a little bit about mission design and things, we do have a really good question from our chat room from Jason519, which the question is, do you think there would be value in mass-produced modular research probes, or should we stick to missions that are built for purpose?
I think it's not an either-or question, that both have appropriate applications. For example, we wouldn't mass-produce Pluto orbiters for the next step in Pluto exploration, but we would mass-produce CubeSats to study the Earth's magnetosphere, to do environmental surveillance of our planet, to understand how it's changing. There are plenty of applications in planetary science and astrophysics as well for mass-produced CubeSats in lunar exploration. But you're also going to need those specialized missions like a Mars sample return or a Uranus or Neptune orbiter or the next mission to the Kuiper belt that'll be one-offs or maybe onesie-twosies where you'd send a pair like Voyager.
Excellent. Yeah, so sort of a nice balance between the two kind of helps everybody out with that. So to talk a little bit about the design process, once New Horizons was approved, what were some of the things that you had to do with that design process?
Well, it was an involved process, and ultimately, almost 2,500 people ended up working on New Horizons to design the spacecraft, build and test it, to fly it, to build the rocket, design and test that, the nuclear power supply, all the 7 scientific instruments. And so it was a very involved process. And, we had a lot of challenges. One of them was that NASA wanted to do New Horizons on about 1/5, 20% the cost of Voyager. And that required making some breakthroughs. Now, a lot of people thought it was kind of a fool's errand, that you couldn't do it, that it cost what it cost. And if NASA only had 20% of the money, you'd get started and you'd find out at some point you couldn't make the case close and actually do the project on that small of a budget. But we managed to pull it off, and I give a lot of credit to the engineers and the scientists at the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab, Southwest Research Institute, all of our university partners who just wouldn't quit. We just kept thinking of new innovations until we found a way to do this.
So to talk a little bit about assembling a team, because Pluto was kind of, I mean, there was data about Pluto, but there wasn't really a lot of data when you're in this process. So how do you assemble a top-notch science team for a relatively unknown place? What are some of the things that you're looking at studying, and how do you get those people to do that?
Yeah, well, fortunately, there was already a science definition team, which many of us had served on, chaired by Jonathan Lenine, who's now at Cornell. Back then, he was at the University of Arizona. And the SDT, as it's called, had laid out the scientific objectives for a first mission to Pluto, to map the geology of Pluto and its big moon Charon, to map their surface composition, study their atmosphere, Pluto's atmosphere in certain ways, etc. And so we knew what objectives we had, and that sort of told us what instruments we wanted to fly. And then we found the best people in the world for either those kinds of data analysis or for building those instruments. And a lot of them were Voyager veterans, people who've been graduate students or even undergraduates on Voyager. In fact, my co-author in Chasing New Horizons, Dave Grinspoon, himself was a grad student on Voyager in the Neptune flyby. And a lot of the members of the New Horizons science team that are now senior scientists were cutting their teeth on Voyager. And NASA announced that it would have a competition and invite teams to propose right just a week before Christmas in the year 2000. And we would have proposals due in March of 2001, which was a really short fuse. So I spent that Christmas, New Year's vacation on the phone, dialing up all the people that I thought we needed to form that team. And the people that you see on the New Horizons team, except for those that we brought on in recent years, all the vets from the original days were people that got phone calls during that short period of about 10 days and said, "You ready to roll up your sleeves, rock and roll, and go win this proposal?"
Yeah. So from our YouTube channel, we have A_D, who's got a really good question, which is, what are some of the designs that allowed New Horizons to work on a 20% budget compared to Voyager? How did you guys save that much?
Well, I'll give you 3 quick examples. First thing we did is we said, if we make it reliable enough of a spacecraft, if we make it completely redundant inside, we don't need to fly 2 of them like Voyager did. And that saves a lot right there. You don't need a second rocket. You don't need a second spacecraft. You don't need a second mission control team. It's riskier, but we took that chance, and it worked out. We downsized the telecommunications system. So we have bit rates that are 10 times slower than 1970s Voyager. But it saved us an enormous amount of money, not just because we had a smaller antenna and lower power transmitters, but it let us get away with only 1 instead of 2 nuclear power supplies, and those babies are expensive. Third thing we did was we put a lot of software on the spacecraft to let it take care of itself in flight. It's called an autonomy system. And therefore, we didn't have to babysit it with round-the-clock mission control for 10 years from the launch in 2006 to the flyby in 2015. Instead, we could get away with a much smaller mission control staff and get rid of a lot of salaries multiplied over 10 years. And that was another enormous savings. And I'll tell you, almost all spacecraft now include these autonomy systems and take care of themselves the way that we pioneered.
Yeah, and another question from Lance in our chat room, which is, what was the single toughest thing to solve to get New Horizons actually on the books and heading out to Pluto? What was the single toughest thing?
The single toughest thing was getting the funding, no question. Raising the better part of $1 billion takes the consensus of a lot of people, the National Academy of Sciences, NASA. You have to line up a lot of Clydesdales to make that work. I would say almost as tough was getting nuclear launch approval in only 4 years, because it involves 42 state and federal agencies. That's a lot of moving parts, and it had never been done before. it typically took 8 to 10 years for other missions to do it. And we just really had to find a new way. And if it hadn't been for our project manager, Glenn Fountain, who made that happen, New Horizons would have never been launched.
So, speaking of that launch, that happened on January 19th, 2006. You guys flew on an Atlas V in its most powerful configuration, the 551. And if that wasn't enough, you put a solid motor third stage on top of it as well to get some extra oomph. And you left Earth at an absolute speed record for a vehicle, 16.26 kilometers per second. That is absurdly fast. And to kind of piggyback on that with a question from our chat room from Johnny Boy, they're asking, will New Horizons overtake the Voyager spacecraft as the most distant spacecraft? And if that happens, when is that going to happen?
That's a really common question. As you said, we were the fastest spacecraft ever launched. And let me make a comparison to tell you how fast it's going. Get rid of the miles per hour, miles per second, all that. Those are hard to comprehend. When I was a kid and Apollo missions were launching to the moon, their speed at the moment of highest speed was 25,000 miles an hour. And it took them 3 days to get to the moon. New Horizons did it in 9 hours.
Whew.
So you can see we were moving. And the previous mission to Jupiter took 4.5 years. We did it in 13 months flat. Very fast spacecraft. However, although we launched faster than the Voyagers, the Pioneers, and any other spacecraft, the Voyagers did multiple giant planet flybys and got a speed boost at each one. And as a result, they're actually moving faster than us. So we hold the record for fastest ever launched, but they're actually slightly faster than us, and we'll never catch them, because we only had one giant planet flyby. So Voyager 2 had 4. Voyager 1 had 2. And so they're both moving a little faster.
Yeah, and to kind of talk about that flyby you did at Jupiter, you did that in February 2007, as you mentioned, 13 months after launch, which that's absurd for me to think about, getting from Earth to Jupiter in just a little over a year. Did you guys take data while you were at Jupiter? And also, why did you use a gravity assist at Jupiter?
Well, the gravity assist saved us almost 4 years of flight time. And that saves fuel, that gives us higher power levels at the Pluto encounter, gives us better data rates, and most importantly, as a reliability thing, who wants to fly 14 years out there in the wilderness if you can get there in 9.5? So it was important to use the Jupiter flyby to get that speed. But what it also let us do is flight test all the software and techniques and all the instruments to make sure Jupiter is the only thing we passed along the way. So we used it to make sure things would work well at Pluto. We conducted over 700 scientific observations at Jupiter. We did some things that had never been done before in terms of studying Io's volcanoes, the Jovian magnetosphere. I could go on about that. So, yeah, we did a lot of science. We made the cover of Science magazine. That's kind of Rolling Stone for geeks. And it worked out really well.
Now, you're cruising after Jupiter until you turn everything back on in December of 2014. That's a really long time, and we've kind of got a question from our chat room that talks a bit about that, from Corkspin, which they're asking, how do you keep a quality team on board and engaged for the long term? Because, from February 2007 to December 2014, how do you keep your team engaged for that long of a time?
Yeah, well, the spacecraft was out in the middle of nowhere, moving at over 1 million kilometers per day. But because we didn't pass anything along the way, a lot of people thought we didn't have anything to do. But in reality, we were conducting scientific observations most of the time using the instruments that study the heliosphere. We were planning the Pluto encounter to the most excruciating detail, and planning backup plans and malfunction plans and going through mission simulations. We planned 4 different Pluto encounters in case we had to dodge debris to different aim points in the system. And for our little team, which en route to Pluto was only 50 belly buttons, we were busy 52 weeks a year, all year. And in fact, I can't count the number of times that either my project manager or my mission operations manager or somebody else came and said, there's just too much work here. So it wasn't a question of boredom. It was a question of how we got everything through this small pipe. Voyager had 450 people on its team. We had 50 to do essentially the same work. Of course, we had modern computers and tools that helped us, but we worked around the clock. And the prize of being the first mission to the last planet, to be the only team in our generation to completely explore a brand new planet, a new place, was so powerful that no one wanted to leave. It was kind of Hotel California. They check in, but they never check out because the reward at the other end of the line was so great. In fact, I remember people telling me, and this is in the book, we're getting near Pluto, and they said, slow down. We don't actually want to do the flyby because we've always had Pluto in our future. We've always had this amazing thing to look forward to, and we don't know how we're going to cope with it in our past. Think about that. It's amazing.
Yeah, and to kind of talk as we approach that point during the mission, you start your science early in 2015. What are you guys looking for as you're coming into the system around Pluto?
Well, the earliest few months, we weren't even quite at the same resolution that you could get back from Earth with the Hubble. So we were mainly measuring the environment around Pluto to understand the radiation environment and charged particles, and also to navigate the spacecraft. We had to hit a really narrow aim point in space to get all the science right when we were at Pluto on that one day of the 14th of July, 2015. So we had an extensive navigation campaign where we take pictures of Pluto against the star fields and ship them back to Earth and analyze them so that we could determine how close the pictures were to the predicted pictures in our computers, because the differences were used. Pluto was off to the left or off to the right or whatever by this amount or that amount, told us how much to fire the engines for those homing maneuvers, of which we did 3 on approach.
So, you're coming up on Pluto. You got the big flyby coming up, and a couple days beforehand, sort of a slight heart attack moment where Pluto goes in, or New Horizons goes into safe mode. And actually, we've got multiple people in our chat room that are asking about those. But Juha Rajamaki is specific. Could you tell us about the safe mode issue that occurred, those few days before? But we had multiple people in our chat room ask about this, and that was a really big deal, I would imagine.
It was a really big deal. We flew the spacecraft 9.5 years and had only very minor little hiccups along the way. And 10 days before the flyby, 10 days before July 14th, on what should have been a very quiet July 4th for our team, major spacecraft fireworks started going off because I got a phone call in the middle of the afternoon. We had just sent all of the 10,000 lines of code up to the spacecraft to run the flyby. And I got a call from the project manager saying, Alan, we've lost contact with the spacecraft. That's never, ever supposed to happen. And the first thing I thought of was Mars Observer. 4 days out from Mars, they lost contact with that spacecraft. It had blown up. So this team swung into action, and it was like that movie Apollo 13. It was our finest moment, but it was also this sleepless 3-day recovery process. Because remember, everything we do with a spacecraft, it's at that time 4.5 hours away by light travel. So when we would send rescue commands up, it would take 4.5 hours to get there, and then it'd take another 4.5 hours to find out if it worked. So it's like playing a chess game with 9-hour round trip delays between each move. But the book tells that story in great detail, and we caused our own problem. It's something that we overlooked. We got thousands of things right. This one thing did bite us. Fortunately, we recovered and got back on the timeline and didn't lose any of the closed flyby sequence that started 3 days later. And the results were just spectacular. But the whole recovery and why it happened and all the personalities and what it was like sleeping on desks and living on pizza for 3 days, you can read about it. I wish we had more than just these 25 minutes.
Yeah. So the flyby happens, and you start getting the first data coming back from it. And I imagine you're there as that first data is coming back, and you could quite literally be the first set of human eyes to actually see this place in the detail that we were able to see it. What was it like being in the room while that was happening?
Well, for our team, it was very emotional. People had worked for years and years and years for that to happen. And there were a lot of tears. There were a lot of people that were just overwhelmed emotionally, in part because it had succeeded, on this one try, with no backup, and in part just because Pluto turned out to have such a spectacular personality as a place, with these mountain ranges that soar higher than the Rockies, and big canyons and glaciers and volcanoes on the surface and haze layers in the atmosphere and interesting moons. And it was kind of overwhelming for a few days. And people kept saying, pinch me, is this really happening? Did this all really work?
Yeah. So we've got a really interesting technical question that I kind of know the answer to, but I want to hear you talk about it a little bit, since you're the man for it. But from Rejinx in our YouTube channel, what was the data rate of New Horizons at Pluto? And if you could talk a little bit about getting the data back as well, and that process, that would be great to kind of add on to that question from the chat room.
Sure. Well, the data is sent back by radio from a dish antenna on the spacecraft, and get this, a 15-watt transmitter, not 15 kilowatt, like an AM or FM radio station, a 15-watt transmitter. And then back on the Earth, NASA's Deep Space Network, which is 3 antenna farms, one each in Australia, Spain, and California, were used to receive the signal. And these are big antennas. They're almost a football field across. And how fast we can transmit depends on a lot of things. It depends on which antenna you're using, the bigger ones or smaller ones, how high in the sky Pluto is, because the higher in the sky, the less air the radio signal has to go through. It depends on whether we've turned on one transmitter or both of our transmitters, and we're piping data through both, and a few other things. But bottom line, the fastest we could transmit from Pluto was 3,000 bits per second, which is like dial-up modem speeds. So we could send like an image back every hour. And in fact, it took us more than a year. It took 16 months to get all the data back, all the spectra and all the images and everything else. It took until almost the end of 2016. But in real time around the flyby, every day a batch of new images would land and other kinds of data. And that's what we were using to feed out to the public, to just kind of reveal Pluto for the first time. Not all the details, but just the basics.
Yeah, and that data coming out, that was a significant cultural moment, I feel like, in the history of humanity. The attention of the world was on you and your team and the data coming in for quite some time after that, and that was impressive.
Yeah. We spent a lot of time planning for that, and we really wanted to be able to share it in a 21st century way, with everything from Instagram and Twitter to live events, and do it so that people anywhere could take part in it, and that worked. And we had the biggest public response: more newspaper front pages, more magazine articles, more website visits than NASA had ever seen, ever. And I think it just shows how much people like raw and risky exploration. When you're going to a new place and you're not sure how it's going to work out, people wanted to tune in. And they can tune in again this year. You can spend your New Year's Eve with NASA, because our next flyby is New Year's Eve and New Year's Day 2019, 1 billion miles beyond Pluto, when we make the first ever exploration of a Kuiper Belt objects, an ancient building block of planets like Pluto, and the most distant exploration in the history of humankind. New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, we'll have it on the web, we'll have it on television, it'll be live, and it's going to be spectacular science.
Yeah, and to kind of piggyback on that a little bit, just to combine two questions in our chat room before we go to a final question, and then our last set of questions that we ask every guest. Dale Kirkwood wants to know what you could tell us about that target. And then Vibes in our chat room is also asking about how difficult it will be to capture that target, which, if I remember correctly, it's named 2014 MU69 for now. We'll see what it ends up being called a little bit later. Can you tell us a little bit about it and also some of the challenges that come with it compared to, say, flying by Pluto?
Sure. Yeah. Well, first of all, 2014 MU69 isn't really a name. It's a license plate. It's a designator. Everything in the solar system has one of these. We'll get a better name. Trust me. So we don't know much about it. What we know is it's this ancient building block, and no one's ever been to anything like that. It's just a dot in the distance, even with the Hubble. It's not the size of the United States like Pluto is. It's the size of Chesapeake Bay. It's the size of a big county. And so it's tiny compared to Pluto. We think it's a double object, either orbiting one another or touching a contact binary. We know its color is red, and that's about all we know. We don't know what it's made of. We don't know how dense it is. We don't know if it has moons and how many. There's some evidence that it could have one moon, but we're still far away. We're still 200 plus million miles away, screaming up to it. And we really won't see it for real until New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. It is a harder target than Pluto in many respects, to answer the second question, in part because it's tiny and it's much fainter. It's hard to navigate to. We know a lot less about it. So the kinds of observations we're doing, they have the same objectives, but we have to back the observations up different ways because we don't know as many details already to focus the instruments on. And so we've spent a lot of time writing software loads for the spacecraft and all the 7 scientific instruments to study it every way we possibly can with this battery of powerful cameras and spectrometers, plasma instruments, all of it. And I'm really looking forward to this flyby. And then after that, we're going to go looking for another flyby.
Excellent. So, yeah, that was another question that I saw in our chat room was, will there be a third one? Sounds like you guys are going to give it a shot. And to sort of take our final question from the chat room, this one always seems very relevant, especially when you have like a spacecraft like New Horizons, which is at escape velocity from our solar system. It's not coming back. From Space Vogel, they're asking, how long will New Horizons be able to go on and stay in contact with the Earth?
And it turns out the limiting factor is the amount of power on the spacecraft to run the radios and the main computer. And every year, our nuclear battery generates less wattage. And we're sure that we can operate it because it's in good health. We have plenty of fuel, plenty of communications capability. If nothing bad happens, we should be able to operate it well into the 2030s. So a long time from now. And once we get creative, like the Voyagers, they used to think they could run till about 2015. Now they're saying maybe 2025. Once we really put our thinking caps on, we may find ways to run it as late as 2040.
Wow, yeah, that's some longevity from New Horizons, and I really hope that you guys get to stick with it for that long. Now, I'm just going to ask you, sort of to close out our interview, we sort of have like a standard set of questions that we ask all of our guests that come on. No right or wrong answers, just the answers that you think go with the question that we're asking. So the first one's related sort of to launch vehicles. So, aerospace engineering should, I think you think you're good for this, which one do you think is going to fly first? NASA's Space Launch System, SpaceX's Big Falcon rocket, or Blue Origin's New Armstrong rocket? So which of those three do you think is going to fly first?
I think it's a horse race. If you look at the schedule, just what people have on paper, SLS and the Blue Origin New Armstrong are scheduled to fly before BFR. But we know schedules slip, and certainly SLS isn't going to fly with people on it until years after the first flight, because they're not going to put people on their first flight. And so the great thing is that if you look out into the mid-20s, if you look out 6 years from now, 7 years from now, all three of these big vehicles are going to be operational. And there's just going to be a tremendous amount of capacity online for human space exploration back to the moon, back to Mars, and I hope back to many other places. We really ought to be talking about the whole solar system. And for example, on the way to Mars, I don't mean physically on one trip on the way, but as we develop our capability, I'd like to see us with humans exploring asteroids, going to Ceres, for example, with humans. There's a great role for humans at Venus, at least in orbit, operating probes on the surface. Once we have the capability of these three launchers and the in-space vehicles that NASA's planning and SpaceX is planning, then I think we're going to see really a mushrooming, if you will, lots of destinations and lots of capability, initially in the 20s, but more so in the 30s and 40s. And, I like to say this is the best time to be alive in space exploration, because with the kind of commercial developments that are happening now alongside the civil developments, this is where Star Trek begins right now. It's awesome.
Yeah, hard. I cannot argue against that. That is spot on. Our second of the four questions that we ask, I feel particularly relevant to you, which is human or robot exploration of the cosmos.
Well, let me ask you a question. When you eat your meal, do you want the fork or the knife? You only get to pick one. That would make it really tough, wouldn't it? They're different tools for different purposes, and it's really hard to eat the entire meal with a knife, and it's really hard to eat the entire meal with just a fork. In fact, you really need the spoon too. And we need both humans and robots, and they serve different purposes, and they're very complementary, and it's a false dichotomy to choose between them. That's my view.
Yeah, good one. So next, the third question, where should we go next? And if you want to do both human and robotic, go for it. So.
Well, there are so many choices. For humans, I think where we will go next is the moon. We need to get our sea legs back, if you will, for planetary surface operations. And then after that, Mars is the obvious destination. But as we do training flights, the asteroids, as I said earlier, might make some good intermediate destinations at greater distances, but not yet having to do atmospheric entry and all of the bioprotection that you want to do at Mars. And for robots, what's really exciting now is more exploration of the Kuiper Belt planets, return missions to Uranus and Neptune, and missions like Europa Clipper, maybe Europa Lander, or a mission to Enceladus or Titan that are exploring these ocean worlds. And we need to do all of those things. We need to figure out how to afford to do all of those things on the resources that we have. We can always argue for more resources, but what we have more control over is keeping the missions in cost so that we can make progress on multiple fronts in the robotic program at the same time the human program is doing that. And I think you're going to see the rise of human commercial spaceflight. And I don't just mean tourism. I think SpaceX and others will be conducting lunar missions and conducting Mars missions of their own alongside, just the same way that while governments were out exploring North America. After all, Christopher Columbus was government funded by Spain. Mm-hmm. Then you saw very quickly, the Dutch East India Company and the Hudson Bay Company form, and they were doing their own exploration and colonization. And I think we'll see something similar in space exploration, and that's going to leverage us tremendously because we're going to have more resources than just what NASA can afford. I'm really excited. Can you tell?
Yeah, it's a golden age is upon us, quite literally. And then my final question, which is also my favorite one to ask all of our guests: why space?
Oh, that's it? That's the whole question?
Yeah, why space? Yeah, why space?
Why space? Because space is everything. Everything is space. Every human being lives in space because we live on a planet in space. Every species on our planet. Every other planet is in space. Every object in the universe, every particle in a particle physics laboratory, everything is in space, is the universe. And it is our future. And it has such opportunity to improve the human condition and the economy and to inspire people. We're always captured by the idea of humans visiting the heavens. And we're, of course, also inspired by the science. Just wait till we start building cities in space and having colonies on other worlds and in space itself. Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be unbelievable.
I think that might be our T-shirt quote for the show to wrap it up with. So thanks so much for coming on, Dr. Alan Stern, the principal investigator of the New Horizons mission. Tell us about your book one more time before we wrap up the interview officially.
Thanks for asking. Dave Grinspoon and I worked very hard on this. It's coming out May 1st. Chasing New Horizons, the whole 25-year story from the 1980s when it was just an idea and a bunch of graduate students through the Pluto flyby. It's the inside story of all the intrigue, the political intrigue, the technical intrigue, how we did it, what went wrong, what went right, who all the heroes are, a couple of the villains. And we're going to do a book tour in May for 3 weeks, but you can already order this book any number of places. Just Google it and get in line, because I understand the pre-order sales are already doing really well. We can't wait to have it out, and it's only about T-minus 60 days now.
All right, and I'm going to get on that and pre-order that too, because I'm sure it's absolutely fascinating, especially with David Grinspoon writing it with you there. That should be a great read.
Incredible.
Yeah. So we are going to head to a break real quick, and when we come back from this break, comments from last week's show. So stay tuned. There's more tomorrow in just a little bit. All good? All right. And he's out. So.
And he's gone.
And he's gone. So, all right. Well, there we go.
Thank you very much, Alan.
Yeah, thank you, Alan. If you can still hear us, thank you so much. That was a fascinating interview, and I'm going to have to go back and rewatch it because it was amazing. That was so awesome. You guys kind of want me to get the comments set?
You have guest in your hand.
You're right. So we need Jared.
Gosh, that was cool.
Did that work for you? So
Yep. Athena has been, and yeah, I need to figure out who's who on the other two.
I'll put Loretta on 3. Does that work?
Yeah, it's fine. Athena, check.
Hello. 1, 2, 3. I had peanut butter this morning, and I'm going to be talking about space, and we're going to do some really cool stuff, and there are other things, and then the sky, and the blue, and okay.
Cool, thank you. And then the sky, and then the blue, and then, okay.
That was a good sound.
Okay, there we go.
I had peanut butter.
I didn't know what else to say. I was like, well, I didn't just eat peanut butter by itself, but I just panicked. I couldn't remember.
I just pictured you with a spoon going, ah.
Like Melanie.
Oh. While she's like thirsty and needing water and walking away from the middle of a ballot.
Thursday, and she just ran around that thing. She was like, I'm in space.
Oh, that's so cute. There needs to be like a space like character for her to be. Yeah. That's so cute. Yay. Okay. That's so cute. Where is it? That is so cool.
I was going to give you a Eurasian sticker, but you don't even have any real estate left.
There we go. That looks good.
That is so cool.
That's good. That's good. All right.
Awesome. This is so cool. Wow, who did your Earth? This is. I convinced. Oh, what?
All alive.
So cool. No, it's good. I thought it was a screen, but it's real. It's real plastic. It's real plastic. I'm just messing with you. Oh, man. That's so funny.
I guesstimated.
It's pretty good. Yeah, we're trying to keep you awake. I'll use that as an excuse.
For the cold?
I'd be like, hey.
How's it going?
That's good.
It has. It does feel a bit warmer, though.
I think the hydroponic plants really are the best part. How often do they get on screen?
A couple times. We actually had a camera pointed at them with a 24-hour live stream back when they were just and then we had like the most epic music we could find from like Transformers. It was like, oh yeah, for like 24 hours straight. It was great.
I mean, our audience asked for it.
They did. So
We delivered.
then,
That's hilarious. I'd prefer that than like the U-log. Like, Chris should have that grow. But am I doing like the intro saying like this is your week's space pod and I'm not sure.
Yes, however, we'll probably do this all backwards. So
Okay. Wait, look at this.
Because this is a space pod, there's no citizen slates.
Okay.
This is sketchy.
Oh yeah, this is. Yeah, how much did we get to do interviews? Much?
No, that's why I'm pushing myself up here. I'm like,
It's good training. It's good practice. It's a nice, safe environment. Carry-ons.
I was just ignore this and just
Yeah,
do
it's
this.
just gonna be us. Like,
Oh,
how's
we're
it going?
we're just hanging out.
Chilling. Like, lay down. Okay, ready. We're gonna take off now.
Cameras don't exist. Just have a conversation. If you we'll start basically here.
Okay.
If you want to say, just a really quick joined by.
I need a quick mic check from.
Dada, you're good with.
I need a quick mic check from Loretta and Hallie, please.
I don't have ears, so he said.
Mic check for
mic check.
Loretta and Hallie.
Check, double check.
hello.
So just
1,
like
2, 3, 4. Pancakes with syrup and tea with caffeine.
What's your favorite tea with caffeine?
It's really not caffeine, so it's a big deal.
And something from Hallie, please.
Okay, now, what did you have for breakfast?
I haven't had breakfast.
Oh, goodness. Okay.
What's your favorite meal of all time?
I don't think our mic is on.
Time?
You can go lower than that.
Oh,
One time I had a cool meal.
yeah. Oh, well, I can say my favorite restaurant in Los
Okay.
Angeles is Crossroads. It's,
Where's your mic pack? I want to make sure it's
Right.
actually on. Sometimes in.
Yeah, no.
There be.
There we go. Ding, ding.
I didn't have anything for breakfast, and my favorite restaurant or food is the food from Crossroads Restaurant in Los Angeles.
Well, now we got to go there.
Oh, yeah,
Now we
I've
got a
heard
new
of it a
bucket
lot,
list
haven't
item.
Yep.
Let's do it. Crossroads.
But the next thing on my list is a cat cafe. Yeah, I've heard
what-
about these.
That would be great.
And
What is a
I've-
cat cafe?
You like actually have to book time to go to a cafe and like there's a bunch of cats and you hang out with them and drink coffee. It sounds so weird.
And
I
a lot
know,
of them you can adopt. A lot of them are for adoption.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't
That's
know that.
Well,
that's a
they're
genius
both, like,
business
those,
model.
yeah.
Because that's
One in San
what
Diego.
you
Do
need.
the show from there now. Just have like cats crawling all around. I feel like that'd be amazing. Your tech is good. You're free
Let's
to
do
go
it.
wherever you
Okay, great. Okay.
Falcon Heavy Landing and cats.
And cats.
Come watch the landing from the cat cafe. Oh man, there's so many things you could do with this.
Yay. Do you want me to say like your full name? Loretta Hidalgo.
Hidalgo.
Like,
Oh, yeah, Hidalgo is fine.
Hidalgo.
English
Okay.
version.
Loretta Hidalgo and then Whitesides.
Whitesides.
And then Hallie Lambert. Okay. Loretta Hidalgo Whitesides. Is that okay if I
Yeah,
say it like that? Okay.
totally. Yeah, it's great.
Hidalgo. I like that name. It's fun to say.
Here we go.
It's hard to
Okay.
say as a kid. I was like, just go by Loretta. Like it was a rare enough name.
A mouthful, your first and last name for a kid.
I don't know what to start.
Go now.
Hey guys, Athena here, and I am sitting here with Loretta Hidalgo Whitesides and Hallie Lambert. So I'm really excited to talk to both of you guys. Loretta here is the co-founder of, co-creator of Yuri's Night out here in LA. And Hallie, you actually write for The Expanse. So this is gonna be a really fun conversation. So I just kind of want to jump right into Yuri's Night. I want to jump into that, why you even started the party out here. I know it's a worldwide party, but talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, we started Yuri's Night back in 2001, and the original idea, well, was just to make space cool again, because back in those days, you guys may not be old enough to remember, but we'd done a really good job of making space boring. It felt like the adults were trying to make it as boring as possible, and I was like, this is not cool. And so we started this party, and we wanted to make space cool. We wanted to bring together artists and musicians with scientists and engineers, and we wanted to give people who didn't have access to the space industry access, because they love space too, and they want to be a part of it. So it was a great opportunity to bridge those worlds and build community and let people come together,
show the power of space to bring the world together.
Yeah, that's incredible, and I feel like every single year is just constantly growing too, and you're really trying to expand more. How did you end up choosing the California Science Center as the place to really have the party out here in LA?
Well, when we started, we did it in the nightclub that's now called Avalon at Hollywood and Vine.
Oh, yeah.
But when the shuttles retired and Los Angeles got one, it was a no-brainer that we had to move there. So we called them up and we're like, hey, can we rent out your pavilion for a party? And we made it happen. It was really cool. And we've been there under the shuttle partying now for 5 years. We've had Buzz Aldrin there. It's been an epic ride.
Yeah, it's been so incredible. And I feel like what's great about it is that because you tie in the art, and so that kind of leveraged me into, I want to talk about science fiction a little bit, with writing for The Expanse. Like, how did you really start to first go about like writing for it? Like, I always want to know where the inspiration comes from. It probably comes from obviously a lot of science, but how did you first?
Well, the show is based on a series of novels by James S.A. Corey, and it's actually two people, Ty Frank and Daniel Abraham. And it actually started out as a role-playing game, online role-playing game by Ty Frank. Many years ago, he developed this whole world, had like a thick binder full of this world that he created, The Expanse. And Daniel Abraham, who had already been writing science fiction under another pen name, started playing the game and then was like, we should make this into a book. And so I think they are scheduled to do 9 books. I think there's 7 out now. And so that's where the idea for The Expanse, we're adapting the books, and they're actually in the writer's room with us and have been amazing, like helping us adapt as best we can without changing too much, keeping the tone and the feel for the story there, while also changing enough of the format, because books and TV are very, very different.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, it definitely is like a lot different. So overall, how do you feel like science fiction is really impacting like the community? Obviously, people who are into science are going to like love science fiction anyway. But do you think it's really making a big impact? I know we were talking backstage earlier about some previous work you've done. How do you think that's really going to impact our future in science?
Well, I hope it will inspire young kids or anyone to start learning about the real side of science, to watch, the space shuttle launches, then maybe see that they can create. There's so much more to do. There's so much to create, and it can be fun and it can be exciting. For example, when I was on CSI, that's where I started writer's assistant a long time ago, and it just blew up worldwide, the show. And as a result, they had a massive increase of people studying forensic science or going into the forensic science side of things, and developing new technology that way that are inspired by the show. So hopefully, it has the same sort of impact on science and space, and we'll see. But
it's incredible. I feel like that ties a lot also in with Yuri's Night, where the overall goal with this is to really try and get more of the community to take part in space exploration and the future of it, correct? I mean, how do you feel like this is going to affect non-science, like, I guess, students, younger kids, like people that were never really in the science world growing up? How do you think this is going to end up affecting them?
Yeah, I think that would be awesome. We created the next generation of space explorers out of all of this.
We
have in LA, we have Yuri's Night Kids as well during the afternoon, where they can go and launch rockets. And
that's so exciting.
Yeah, and talk to people who work in the industry and learn about it.
Yeah, you can Wait, what do they like launch? Is it like the soda bottle?
Estes. Like actual fire. Yeah.
This is amazing.
Fire.
What?
Yeah, so it was one of the cool places, this Columbia, because they have the permits to actually launch, Estes rockets like in LA County. So if you want to make fire, it's a good way to do it.
Wow, that's amazing. And this is the same day as Yuri's Night?
Yeah, it's in the afternoon. It's from 10 to 4 in Downey at the Columbia Memorial Space Center.
Okay.
It's for kids, but, you guys can come if you want.
I would totally do that. So is that so Yuri's Night is going to be April 7th?
Yes.
This year, right? Correct? Okay, so it's going to be Saturday. So you're going to be doing Yuri's Night first in Downey for children during the day, and then you're going out to the California Science Center, which is going to be like the big party. That's like really, really exciting. Okay, cool. So who are you most excited about this year? I guess that you're bringing on board, that you're going to have at the California Science Center?
Yeah, we have some, well, both of you are ambassadors at the event this year, so if you want to come hang out with all three of us, we'll be there. So that's fun. And we have a cool slate of ambassadors this year. Well, our keynote is astronaut Nicole Stodd.
Yes.
She did a long-duration mission on International Space Station. She flew on the space shuttle as well, and she's now retired, and she's the artistic astronaut. She paints as well. She's a chemical engineer, I think, by training, and she's just really awesome powerhouse astronaut. So we're really excited to have Nicole out. She's doing great stuff with humanitarian work, and what Yours Night's all about is like, how do we use space to help Earth and make a difference for our people. And so she's going to talk about a little bit about her work that she does in that as well. So we have Nicole coming. We have Bill Nye is going to joining us this year.
Exciting!
So we can all come. We can all save the world together. It's going to be good. And we have some other fun people like Dylan Taylor is coming. Mm-hmm. He started Space for Humanity, which is a nonprofit that's looking to. You can submit your video to apply to get a space flight for people who can't afford to buy their own suborbital space flight. Space for Humanity is going to be giving away space flights to people who they think can use that experience for good, to make a difference. So,
speaking of the suborbital
guy you want to
flights,
meet.
Yeah, definitely. So with the suborbital flights, let's talk a little bit, I guess, about Virgin Galactic. I really, really want to get into this. When do you think the first, I guess, commercial suborbital flights are going to be?
Yeah, well, happening? I'm hoping. Well, I have one of the tickets, so I've been waiting for a long time. I'm really excited and hopeful. I would love to fly next year. That sounds great to me. We're really excited. We're so close to getting back into powered test flights. And so, the mood in Mojave is really, there's all this excitement brewing because we're so close, and just to get to see Spaceship 2 with the rocket motor on again will be, it's going to be a really great day for us. And then, getting through a couple more power test flights, getting Richard Branson into space, and then starting to fly our customers is going to be down in New Mexico is going to be really exciting.
Oh man, that's going to be so cool. And just to clarify, I guess, for everyone, in case people don't know what the suborbital flights are going to be doing, it's just going to be going where exactly?
Yeah, so we'll take off like an airplane. You go up to about 50,000 feet, drop the spaceship. We light our rocket motor, go for about a minute, and then that's enough to get you out of the atmosphere. You break the speed of sound. You're going like Mach 3, so 3 times the speed of sound.
Yes.
And then they kick the motor off, and you get about 3 to 4 minutes of weightlessness. So you'll be just like this.
That's so cool.
You'll be able to float. So I have, 80. I've done about 80 flights as a staff on the zero-G plane.
Right, because
so
you were training.
Yeah. So when I worked there, we get to float for on an airplane. You can float for about 20 seconds at a time. So the idea. You can hold your breath for 20 seconds, The idea of getting to, have 3 or 4 minutes. I can't hold my breath for 3 or 4 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
It's actually a long time if you have to sit through, when you're sitting in the microwave waiting for it. Anyway.
Oh, my gosh.
So you get to float 4 minutes.
And you're having fun.
Yeah.
It'll go like that.
It'll go a lot faster than waiting for the microwave. So getting to see the curvature of the Earth and the blackness of space and look down on our home planet and float around is going to be really sublime.
That's going to be so cool. Now, is this outfit going to be one of the...
You have a great idea. I hadn't thought about that. I should definitely wear this on my flight. I think we might have, assigned spacesuits, but...
Yeah, that's going to be really cool. What is, I guess, the number one inspiration for you when you're writing some of the script for, or some of the stories for The Expanse, and a lot of everything that you do? Where does one of your big inspirations come from?
Oh, for writing the specific show, personal inspirations, or show
for sci-fi.
For sci-fi.
Yeah.
I guess just all. Well, there's Carl Sagan's one. I love reading. Just he was such a prolific writer as well as a scientist. So that reading his words inspiring within just Star Trek and historical Space Odyssey, 2001, those kind of movies, and just. Remembering back to when I was a little girl, grew up in the country, and I would go outside even in the wintertime when the sky was really clear and you could just see so many more stars because you're not in the city. And I would stare up at the sky and just try and contemplate how far it went out and how far eternity, what the universe, and my little brain could not handle. I don't think my adult brain could still even handle it. But I would just start crying, just trying to imagine and figure it out. And I think, ever since I was little, have been fascinated by space. But I'm a creative. I'm a writer. I'm not a scientist. Those are, you go with where your strengths are. But this show, has opened so many doors to be able to meet real scientists and astronauts, and kind of become an astronaut groupie in a way. I've met so many since I've been on the show.
I love that.
And, so just that continual inspiration of now having a door into the Cassini finale. I was at JPL for and met amazing people there, and so it's opened doors to rekindle and continue on the inspiration.
Yeah, and the journey, and I think
Yeah.
that's one thing that's so incredible about this, because you're tying those two parts of the brain together, both like the creativity and then also obviously the logic, the science. But that's one thing about space and space exploration, astrophysics. Physics is actually tying those two worlds together. It's not just like, it's a lot of creativity. So before we wrap up, I do want to ask about the space swag that you have, that you brought here. So what is it? Is this the T-shirt?
Yeah, so I brought the T-shirt. Got the sticker. The sticker looks great on the laptop.
Yo, I'll just add that on somewhere.
And the patch. So yeah, if you want to,
so cool.
If you want to find out more about Yuri's Night, you can go to yurisnight.net. Go to the store to get some swag. You can go to la.yurisnight or spacecoast.yurisnight to check out we have two. So that was the other thing we added this year. So we've done the LA party under the shuttle last 5 years, but this year for the first time we're doing the Florida event, spacecoast.yurisnight.net, under the Atlantis. So we're shuttle to shuttle. We're doing
Oh man,
we're going for all three next year. No, I'm teasing. So we have two shuttle parties that we're doing this year. So no matter which coast you're on, we got a party for you.
And is it gonna be the same night on?
No, well that's
Saturday?
what's cool. So I get to go to both. So
yes.
Ours is going to be Saturday here in LA. It'll be Saturday, April 7th, and in Florida it'll be Friday, April 13th. So
okay.
With that. And then there's one in DC on the 7th as well, and there's one in Seattle on the 14th. So
is there not one in New York also yet, or
not that I've heard of yet?
Okay, we'll have to set that up.
It's
at the Enterprise or something.
we're working on Enterprise.
Yeah.
We've got some, but it's growing.
It grows, exactly. And then on the 12th, which is like the actual day that Yuri Gagarin went to space, that's when it's like the whole world, just like look on social media and stuff, like everyone's going to be having their own separate parties. So I'm really excited for this. But awesome. Well, thank you two so much for coming and talking a little bit about science fiction, Yuri's Night, and space exploration. So thank you guys so much. And wait, other camera, right? Okay. Thank you guys so much for watching. And we're going to jump to a commercial break now. Thanks. Very new at this. Okay. You guys rock. Good job.
Athena, can I get that close
Nice
again?
work.
Yes.
And
How should I close that?
Instead of saying,
So no commercials. Thank you so much for watching.
Oh,
Like
are we
and
still-
subscribe, and watch our live shows every Saturday.
Okay.
You can
All right.
basically say almost exactly that.
Okay.
If you want, but your own words are great too. Dada, do you have a good edit point on one? Was there a good? Okay.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and tune in next week for our next show. Thanks. Was that it?
That's good.
Did I say?
Yep.
Okay,
Good.
cool.
Rock and roll.
Ben
Awesome.
the director.
Right.
Sorry?
Ben the director.
Yeah,
Yes.
I tried. Welcome to the studio. I think it's the first time.
Yeah,
we've
this
ever
is
been here
really
in person.
cool.
I know we've had you all
Thanks for having us.
on the set.
On the
hologram
screen, a hologram screen.
Sure, some.
they
Yeah.
get to sign the set.
Yeah.
Welcome to tomorrow.
Thank
Yeah.
you. This is awesome.
This was amazing.
Oh,
Thank you guys
yeah.
so much.
Because you're here in person, everyone who shows up in person has to sign our set. On the side.
Oh,
You can
cool.
actually pick which side you want to sign.
Thanks, Drew.
Sweet.
Oh, wow.
Go for it.
Holy smokes.
Right.
Chris Radcliffe. I love Chris Radcliffe.
Right? We
He's
also
in the
have
chat room right now.
Yeah, he's in
Liam,
the chat. So.
Dave, Sarah,
Okay, so
Okay,
down,
then-
way down here.
Aster Anthony.
if you like, or we also have the other side, and I think the rookies that came in the studio.
Yeah, the rookies did sign.
So
Yeah.
on the side, anywhere, right?
Yeah, it doesn't
Oh, yeah.
matter.
I'm going to tag
Go
it.
for it.
Whatever you like.
Throw it down.
Oh, yeah.
As long as it's off camera, that's the only requirement.
Oh,
So cool.
dry erase. Actually, Sharpie, not dry erase. What am I thinking?
Pictures.
It's, yeah. No.
Oh, okay.
In fact, please do.
Yes,
Oh, that's
absolutely
a-
take pictures.
Yay!
I guess I kind of printed it. I didn't really
Oh
sign
wait,
it,
that's
but,
I'm
you
not
know.
even on selfie mode. Okay, what did you do?
I kind of.
Oh, that's
Printed it.
perfect.
That's
That's
a good
perfect.
picture.
Yeah, I love that. Oh, this wall's like really getting filled. It's so nice. I love that there's like
that you
different
do
colored
that.
Sharpies now. I'm so happy you
I
guys
love
got
that
like the
Kevin has his
different
own
colored Sharpies.
sticker. That's hysterical.
It makes it so fun. Yay! Can I get a selfie with you guys?
Oh yeah, I always forget all these things.
Go on set. You get the
Yeah.
cool, Earth or not Earth.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
The earth, the earth in the background.
There's like,
Yeah, that
oh,
one's
should
good.
we-
Go on the side 'cause my right arm is longer than my left. So she's a selfie pro.
I do that too.
I've
though.
like
It's
learned
you do
to
it.
know which one. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Yay! I don't need
Oh,
the
nice.
tattoo.
Yeah,
Like,
perfect placement
too.
of the tattoo.
I
I
love
need to
it.
get myself some of those.
That's
Those are good.
amazing. Yeah,
I'll bring you one to the party.
That's so cool. So in the photo, I'm going to add little like pointers to each plane and what each one is. And then the one that we don't know, a question mark. Yeah.
Crowdsource it. Like 20,000 people will know.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. It was such a great interview. Thank you guys for coming in.
And I'll see you at Yuri's.
I'll be seeing you at yours night. Yeah, I'm super excited for that. That's gonna be good. Yay!
That's
Awesome.
true. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Good luck with the. Oh, let me give you your pack back. Good luck with the show.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You guys doing anything? You like heading out to some?
Leave. I'm on borrowed time. They're like, when are you going to be home? I'm like, 2.
When traffic allows.
Stopping off. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for all the great stuff you do.
Yeah. See ya.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you both. Yeah.
Without the mohawk, though.
Huh?
Without the mohawk.
It'll be back for Yuri's night.
Oh, interesting.
So excited.
I don't know. I haven't figured out what I'm going to do with it yet, but I'm going to have the mohawk back for sure.
I'm trying to figure out.
Oh yeah,
there's stories. There's stories.
Can I send it to you? Yeah.
I have my phone.
Actually, oh, okay.
You guys hear me? So, I'm guessing no one can still hear me. So, yep, I know. Been muted this whole time. Oh, now you can hear me? Okay, cool. All right, well, we are going to do a show shortly here. I'm not sure if Ben is doing news stuff or if we're just there to calibrate cameras. Looks like colors are changing. So yeah, we will begin shortly. We've got the interview and one of the space pods out of the way, at least an extra long space pod. And probably can't hear me right now, but thank you to Athena for conducting that and Loretta.
Mike, your mic is low for some reason.
My mic is low.
Yeah, I've got you like cranked, but I can barely hear you.
That's weird because I haven't adjusted any settings. Let's see here.
Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Is that better or worse?
Same.
Same?
Worse.
Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3.
Slightly better. Do more.
Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3.
That sounds a little.
Any better?
I've got more volume, but you still sound a little hollow for some reason.
I'm not sure why. Or what about on this side? Nope, can't do anything else on that side. All right, let me try messing just with Skype settings then. Again, I haven't changed anything. There it is. Okay, testing, testing, 1, 2, 3.
That sounds not terrible, but low volume.
Well, I've got everything cranked up as loud as it'll go, so I can't really do anything else on my end.
Okay.
Like, I'm peaking hardcore right now on my end, although I can't hear it.
I don't know why
This is a
that's.
special room. You never want to mention any.
Did you guys put me on a different channel or something like that?
Negative. It's good enough now.
The other room is.
All right, well, if I project, will that probably solve the problem?
Sounds like it, yeah.
All right, I'll just be sure to speak loudly. Yep, same microphone, BEF. Haven't changed any settings until just now. So yeah, not sure why that's happening. Yeah, everything's. Yeah, Destructor. It's getting the signal from the HDMI Mage well that's connected to the camera for these wireless mics, so it's not using the camera's internal mic or anything like that. But it'll be fine.
Yeah, I think it sounds like it's like squelching itself, and it doesn't open up until you have consistent sound for a couple seconds.
Weird.
I mean, I get audio from him, but it like when he was just doing that just now, it was opening up quite a bit. But I've got him cranked.
And I'm like fully cranked on this end. I'm at like +6 sensitivity, and I manually set the input on Skype to max. So I'm not sure.
Sounds like
Keep talking, Mike.
Today I had some coffee and water and eggs and bacon for breakfast, and it was all right. It was pretty delicious. The coffee was the best part of it, of course. And today talking about some pretty interesting things politically and business-wise, regards to state history. And it's going to be so far it's been a great show, and once everything's all put together in the correct order, I'm sure this will be a great episode.
Directly off of the Skybox. But do we have usable level for the show? Are
We do have usable level for
And
the
if
show.
I do this, does it break it?
Speak, Mike.
Let's see. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Am I broken or am I fixed? I'm just fine. Let's see.
And we'll troubleshoot the rest of it. As long as we have viable levels,
We do.
the way we're boosting it is a bad thing. We should be boosting it to his side.
Okay.
But I don't want to delay the show too much longer unless we have to.
Right.
All right, cool.
That's right. I think we're good for this show, Mike.
Again, I'm at max, both on the wireless mic and the Skype input. So
He says he's at max on the wireless mic and Skype input.
That's weird. Tap on the mic. All right, it's getting that microphone. What about on the receiver? There's an AF out on the receiver. Is that what's the volume level at that?
it is at, well, it's the dB setting, and right now it's at plus 12.
Plus 12.
That is maximum. What about the transmitter?
What about the transmitter?
The gain. There should be a gain on the transmitter pack.
Um, I'm not sure.
We're just doing a quick audio troubleshooting while we had a moment.
Okay. Am I on?
No, you are
I don't
now.
want to be. So I'm off, right?
Yes. However, the board is live.
Yeah, I can't tell exactly. All I know, I can't tell what the gain is. It's just, all I can tell is that it's peaking on the receiver. So, I mean, not sure what else to do. So you guys are saying in the chat room that it sounds much better now? If this is usable, then we can proceed, I suppose.
Yeah, we're good with that. It is what
Okay.
it is for the show.
All right. Again, I didn't mess with any settings on my end until just now, so.
I just want to say it's not bad. It's just weird. So I just wish I could understand why, but it works. So it doesn't matter. I just like to know the
Just
why.
got adjusted. Yeah.
I need the step today. No, I need the step today. I'm really short. It's amazing.
So I still have Athena on Benjamin's channel, correct?
Yes. Do you want her on a different channel?
Can you talk for me?
Hello, hi, how's it going?
Do you want her on Jared's channel so
I
that's
don't care.
easier for automation?
I don't care. I'll figure it out. Just need to know who's where.
I'm still me.
Yay! I'm
Oh yeah,
Benjamin.
what's
You always do you.
What's Athena's title?
title? Like who I am?
We don't have.
I still don't know who I am.
We don't do titles anymore. We just do.
I really don't. Like, how do I don't know.
Karen, are you on?
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of things. No. Now I am.
Yay.
All of the things and
Battery was dying.
all of the stuff.
You were Amber.
Cool. I don't know what was happening. I just know that you did like a thing.
I fixed stuff.
Yes, Stoge. Actually, I probably could use 2 steps, though, is the thing.
Did you turn it back on?
No! For the love of... No! Every time it goes in my pocket, it turns off. Like, I don't know what to tell you.
Is it bad to keep it on the table?
Put it in your pocket.
No, it's ugly. Like, that's all.
Just don't freak out if it feels like I'm grabbing your butt during the show. I'm just turning your mic on. It's fine.
You're fine.
What's happening?
You're fine. Jason519, that is the correct answer. Thank you for that. I appreciate it very much so.
What is it? The correct answer? What?
Are we ready to do the show?
Oh wait, here we go.
Sure. I'll be as... Oh, yeah, I'm as ready as... Sure. Thankfully, I have the easy job because I already know what happened. So I already know it's actually awesome, as opposed to me just going, it's going to be great, and then it ends up to not be great, and then everyone thinks I'm a liar. So there's that. This time it's like, no, really, that was super amazing. All right. Everyone is good. All the sound is good. I sound as weird as I normally sound, I guess.
We all sound weird.
No.
It's
Welcome to the conversation. I am Carrie Ann. I'll be your host in this first segment of the show. As you noticed, Jared looks a little bit better today. I'm actually joined by Athena, who's one of our hosts from Tomorrow Science, as well as Mike, our rocket specialist. I do have Dada behind me producing the show.
Happy birthday, Mom.
Oh, happy birthday, Mom. Oh, cute. Now, today in news, Athena, what do we have?
Yes, we have exoplanet hunter Tess. It arrives in Florida.
Ooh, and Mike?
And the National Space Council has met for the second time.
Perfect. And then for our main topic, Jared will be back, and he's going to be interviewing one of his heroes, the, what are we calling him? The Pluto evangelist, Dr. Alan Stern. Then, of course, in our third segment, we take a look back at your comments from last week's show.
Let's start over.
So close! I said it was fine. Welcome to the conversation. I am Carrie Ann, and I will be your host in this first segment of the show. Now, with me, instead of a Jared, I have the lovely Athena, who is one of our Tomorrow Science hosts. I also have with me Mike, who is our rocket specialist, and a Dada behind us, who is going to be producing the show.
Happy birthday, Mom.
Oh, happy birthday, Mom. Now, today in news, we have Athena.
Exoplanet hunter Tess arrives in Florida.
Awesome. Mike?
The National Space Council has met for the second time.
Interesting. And then for our main topic, Jared will be back, and he's going to be interviewing one of all of our heroes, really, the Pluto evangelist, Dr. Alan Stern. Then in our third segment, we're going to look back at your questions and comments about last week's show. But this is Tomorrow Orbit 11.08.
Good morning. How's everything up in the sky?
Now, I want to make sure I give a huge thank you to the citizens who support us here on the Tomorrow Show. These are the Escape Velocity citizens. These people have given us $10 or more per episode on Patreon, or $30 a month on makersupport.com. They, of course, get their name in the show, big and bold, so you can read it. They get early access to view-only copies of the show rundown, so you can see what we're going to talk about before we even talk about it. And honestly, so much more. If you are also interested in becoming a citizen of tomorrow, head on over to makersupport.com/TMRO. Now, Mike, I feel like there was like a launch or something that happened this last week, which I know I say every week, but, you know, that's so great that I get to say it every single week. So why don't you start us off with launches? What did we miss in last week?
Sure. Yeah, and it's almost kind of disappointing because there was only one launch this week, although it was a really cool one. So I'm not that disappointed. But what we're talking about, the only launch that happened this week actually occurred after several days of delays for it, but finally took off on Thursday. And we're talking, of course, about the Falcon 9 rocket that delivered a Spanish radar imaging satellite and also 2 demo satellites for SpaceX's proposed constellation of Starlink satellites to provide global broadband access. So, this was a cool launch.
Very cool.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Liftoff. Vehicle pitching downrange.
Night launches, of course, are always beautiful, and this particular launch occurred on Thursday, February 22nd at 14:17 Coordinated Universal Time from Space Launch Complex 4 East at Vandenberg Air Force Base in California. And the rocket was traveling south by southwest from Vandenberg to place the payloads into a polar sun-synchronous orbit. Now, the Falcon 9 first stage actually is launching for the second time. It previously flew the Taiwanese Formosat 5 Earth observation mission, also from the same place, from California, California in August of last year. Now, the primary payload was the Spanish radar imaging satellite known as PES, or it's Spanish for peace, and it's owned by a company called Hydasat, which oversees Spain's government satellite programs, and it's going to collect radar imagery for Spain's military, their allies, and commercial companies. The Falcon 9 also successfully delivered a pause into a 514-kilometer polar orbit that was tilted about 97.4 degrees to the equator. Now, despite the Falcon 9 first stage being a flight-proven booster, SpaceX did not attempt a landing of the first stage, and I can only assume it has to do with the upcoming Block 5 version of the Falcon 9 that will be the primary workhorse of SpaceX's fleet without plans of doing any of the older Block versions. Now, they were able to deploy the pause satellite successfully, and riding along with them were 2 demo satellites for the Starlink constellation. And they were named Microsat 2A and Microsat 2B, nicknamed Tintin A and Tintin B. And they actually are using their own propulsion to take themselves higher than that 500-kilometer orbit to roughly 1,125 kilometers in altitude once the controllers finish an initial post-launch checkout of the spacecraft. Now, after they're doing all the different tests with that and making sure that the ground stations work, they hopefully will be able to deploy around 4,425 of these satellites, broadcasting in Ku and Ka band frequencies. And there's also a really interesting proposal that they have now for an additional 7,000 satellites that would be flying in a really low orbit, broadcasting in the V-band frequencies. So that would make, if this is realized, that would make Starlink the biggest satellite fleet in operation. Now, despite the lack of the booster landing, there was another type of recovery attempt on this mission. SpaceX has been working on being able to recover the payload fairings, which are about $5 million per launch, and have installed cold gas thrusters and parachutes to aid in their slowdown and recovery. SpaceX also outfitted a boat with a large net to catch the payload fairings. The boat is called Mr. Steven, and it attempted to catch one of the fairings, although it came really, really close. The fairing landed about a few hundred meters away, and Elon Musk said that they should be able to catch it with slightly bigger parachutes to slow down the descent. Now, the next Falcon 9 launch is scheduled for early Sunday from Cape Canaveral, that is also carrying another Spanish-owned satellite, Hispasat 30W-6, a communications satellite. So looking forward to that and some other launches next week as well.
Awesome. That's very, very cool. I just lost it in the chat room. Where did it go? Wangot from the Twitch channel says, which did they play Bowie though? I thought it said which Bowie song do they play, but still the thought is still the same. Wouldn't that be great if that was just the theme now? Like whatever SpaceX ever launches on a demo mission, it must play a Bowie song. I think would be hilarious.
Please, I hope they do that.
Right? I'm guessing that's not something. I feel like that was something you would have added to the story if that was a thing.
Yeah, probably. And if there was a song playing, they didn't broadcast it over the live webcast. So
that's
someone
fair.
was probably listening to a Bowie song at SpaceX while this was happening.
Right? Yipswank? I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. In the chat room says licensing nightmare. Yeah, I can only imagine. That's hilarious. Good. Yeah. Well, demo launches are demo launches, and I think that's really cool. I feel like there was a couple of new things going on there, but main mission is the mission. And somebody else in the chat room, I didn't mark it, said that it's pronounced pa as opposed to pause.
Ah.
Just that we're all on the same page there. Perfect. So, Miss Athena.
I've heard like 4 different pronunciations of it, so I still don't know who to believe.
I've heard it both ways.
Hey, my Mexican friend says it's pause, so.
That's funny.
Yeah.
All right.
Or pause Pez, like the candy.
Oh, there you go.
Those things.
A little bit of each.
According to the customer, it's puff.
According to the customer, it's puff.
No, it's Spanish.
Well, and that's what it is.
Does
Puff.
a Z sound
My
like
apologies.
You don't say, but that's okay. So, Miss Athena, you didn't have to do a planetary story just because you're sort of standing in for Jared, but I very much appreciate that this is also your area that you like to speak about. So tell me a little bit more about TESS. What is it? What's going on? All the things.
Yeah, so TESS is the next exoplanet hunting satellite that's actually going to be launched soon. It's going to be in April. And just arrived to Kennedy Space Center for its final checkouts and integration to get onto the Falcon 9 launch vehicle. It's known as the Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite, better known as TESS. It's due for launch in April from Complex 40 launch pad, with the option of being reassigned to launch pad 39A. Right now, they're looking at April 16th for a potential launch date, but they're currently waiting for approval first from the U.S. Air Force's Eastern Range. It's currently undergoing preparations for launch in the Payload Hazardous Service Facility at Kennedy Space Center. This is the same clean room where Cassini, New Horizons, Mars rovers, and so many other missions have actually been prepped for before launch. This will be the first NASA science mission to launch on a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket. So that's really, really exciting. TESS will be launched into orbit about 250,000 kilometers from Earth. And it's going to deploy the second stage on the Falcon 9. And then the spacecraft's thrusters will boost it into its furthest arc of its orbit, intercepting the moon's orbit, where it's then going to pick up the lunar gravity to slingshot it into its designated orbit. I just think that's the coolest thing ever. Where it's then going to orbit Earth around once every 2 weeks. At a maximum orbital distance at about 376,000 kilometers from Earth. So because of this specific maneuver required to put it into proper orbit, the launch will be very much based around the position of the moon. So there is a big series of potential launch dates. Now, TESS is going to be a 2-year mission, tracking over 200,000 stars and measuring periodic dips in light, which indicates that there may be a planet orbiting that star. And this is better known as exoplanets that we've been searching for. And it's going to make these measurements thanks to its 4 wide-field astronomical cameras. And when the satellite nears perigee, which is the closest point to Earth in its orbit, which is normally 3 times farther than the geostationary belt, TESS will send science data collected through a Ka band antenna back to Earth, which is then when we can analyze and find out whether or not we actually were able to pick up any exoplanets. TESS will be working alongside data collected from the James Webb Space Telescope, which is going to be due for launch in 2019, making follow-up observations collected by James Webb. So it's really great that these two are going to be working together. And then following in the pattern of the Kepler mission, TESS will be scanning the sky for exoplanet signatures. And it has the goal of actually finding rocky exoplanets close to Earth size in the habitable zone of a star. So that really is, again, the hopes of finding life and extraterrestrial, some type of life, even if it's just like microbial. Over the next few weeks, TESS engineers will be running performance tests in addition to the vibration, acoustic, and thermal tests done over the past year. So extending the solar panels, pre-stowing in them, it's going to fuel the spacecraft around 45 kilograms of hydrazine fuel for its main engine and its control thrusters. Then it's going to nicely encapsulate inside the Falcon 9 payload, where it's going to be transported to the SpaceX rocket hangar at Pad 40 to then be, attached to the 2-stage launcher, and then it's going to be launched. So I'm super excited for that. I think there's going to be a lot of amazing data that's going to come out of this. I'm also just really excited to see, once it's put into orbit, the actual extension of the solar panels, and then see its thrusters really put it into its actual orbit. But I just think it's so cool how we put satellites and spacecraft in orbit, where it picks up gravity from either the moon or another passing by planet like Juno with the Jupiter mission, and it'll actually pick up its gravity and they'll put it in its trajectory. So this is going to be really exciting. I know there's a lot of colleagues of mine back in the Hayden Planetarium that are doing research on exoplanets. Nice. So they're going to be collecting a lot of this data to hopefully find other planetary systems out there. Yeah. Like TRAPPIST-1.
The gravitational assist always reminds me of a ride at Walt Disney World at Epcot Center, where you are supposed to be on the space mission and you do the gravitational assist. So you were saying that, that's all I could think of was oh yeah, and then you kind of slingshot around here and then you go over there and then you end up on Mars and bad things happen and it's terrible. But you live, so it's okay. Mike, you were going to say something. I'm so sorry. I cut you off.
Something else really interesting about this is SpaceX just recently got certified to be able to launch NASA science missions. So I think that's really cool that this has all come together.
Yeah. And I really like the conjunction of TESS and James Webb Telescope as well. I didn't actually realize that they were going to be sort of speaking to each other and working kind of on the same sort of thing. So that's also really neat. Oh, space is like one big happy family, you guys.
It is. Big collaboration. Definitely a big international collaboration.
Exactly. Oh, that's the perfect segue. So, speaking of collaboration, Mr. Mike, you were talking about the National Space Council meeting for the second time.
Yeah.
I assume that went perfectly. right? We decided everything, and it's all good now,
Well,
right?
Actually, I'm pretty excited about the stuff that was talked about at this meeting. I mean, it's kind of boring red tape type stuff, but the goals that they are wanting to do is really exciting. And what I'm talking about is they met at Kennedy Space Center on Wednesday of this week, and most of the recommendations that they would come up with, they came up with 4, all have to do with regulations and being able to speed up the process of being able to get licensing and even export control as well. So they're even talking about revising ITAR, which is really exciting, and trying to speed up all of these things that slowed down so much development of new commercial space companies. So let's just jump right into this. The first recommendation that the National Space Council had was that the Secretary of Transportation should work to transform the launch and re-entry licensing regime. The Department of Transportation would require a single license for all types of launch and re-entry vehicle operations, and would hopefully be able to transform all of those regulatory processes from just one set of requirements to have some sort of performance-based licensing. Now, here's a good example. If there's ever a mission that needs to be transferred, you can't transfer a rocket from one launch site to another. If a company receives its license to launch from, say, Kennedy Space Center and wants to move their mission to California, or even just a few miles away from Cape Canaveral at one of the Air Force stations, that same company has to complete the entire licensing process all over again. So they're hoping that that needs to be completed by March 1st of 2019. The second recommendation is that the Secretary of Commerce should consolidate all its different space commerce responsibilities other than launch and reentry into the Office of the Secretary of Commerce that would be responsible for all commercial space regulatory functions. For example, what they're wanting to do is get together with the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense, the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, and NASA to be able to streamline existing commercial remote sensing and communication operations so that they will be able to speed up and have kind of like a one-stop shopping for all of the different licensings that need to go into creating a permit for satellites, which can take up to 5 years. And they're hoping to get that done by this summer, July 1st of 2018. Now, the third recommendation was to work together with the National Telecommunication and Information Administration to coordinate with the FCC to help protect and maintain all the different radio frequency spectrums necessary for all the different space commercial activities. And the final recommendation, which is what I'm most excited about, is that the Executive Secretary of the National Space Council, in coordination with all the different members and all the new basically consultants that have been added onto this, are wanting to review all of the different export licensing regulations to help commercial space activity. And the main point of conversation during this meeting was how this would affect our cooperation, or lack thereof, with China, and how we could be able to cooperate with them and have a lot more manageable technology transfer laws. Still protect, important things, but get rid of a lot of the stuff that, like, China already has. So, especially considering China's lunar ambitions and their partnership with Russia and the European Space Agency to accomplish their goals, if NASA, our partners, and China all works together on all of our shared goals, all of those could be realized so much faster. So that's what I'm most excited about, that these people that in the past were the same people that were passing laws to hinder NASA from cooperating with China are now changing their mind and being a lot more open to the possibilities of cooperating with them. So that really excites me, because I want to see all of humanity go on this journey together. So that last recommendation about the ITAR control should be, they want that to be completed by January 1st of 2019. So
wow, it's quick.
Yeah, I'm excited about these changes and to see what might actually get passed in the future.
Yeah. It's funny, not that people weren't listening, because I know that you were, but there's a number of comments in the chat room talking about the helmet. Vib3S from YouTube says, I need that helmet. Andy Law, also from YouTube, says, that is a great pick. Donald Trump from YouTube says, damn, that helmet looks good. And Neb Hittens, also again from YouTube, says, iconic helmet. Like, everyone was so focused. It was a great picture. I also sort of love that, like, nobody was taller than any of the astronauts in that picture. if anyone happened to notice that, because astronauts are not really known for being very tall people. Most of them are more like this. I actually have a step, but nobody was taller than the astronauts there. So I particularly also like that picture. That was kind of funny.
That was so cool. I want that helmet.
Right? Oh goodness. So Miss Athena. As I also do this with Jared as well. Look at the title of your next story. Try to figure out what it's about, and I have no clue. So this says Mars 2020 will take a visitor home. Now you're not talking about any sort of billionaire person with maybe a launch. A launch company?
No, definitely not.
I just want to make sure. Sure.
No, definitely not. Yeah.
So then what are we speaking about?
A rock.
So, okay, good.
Yeah, we're totally good. It's literally a rock. So scientists are actually bringing a Mars meteorite back to the surface of Mars.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it literally crash landed here on Earth, and we determined that it was from Mars. So it's going to be on the Mars 2020 rover, which will be touching the Martian surface to search for evidence of past microbial life. And it's going to be bringing this exactly meteorite that you're seeing right now back with it. It's called the Say Ala Ahmir, also known as SAU-008, which is a meteorite. It actually landed in Oman, which is just south of Saudi Arabia. And after lots of analyses, we realized it came from Mars. So scientists are putting this sample on the 2020 rover specifically because of to calibrate a laser scanner instrument that is equipped on the rover's robotic arm. It's known as Sherlock, which stands for Scanning Habitable Environments with Raman or Ramen. I'd like to say Ramen because it sounds like ramen noodles. Okay,
exactly.
Anyway, Raman and luminance for organics and chemicals. So this instrument is actually it uses a spectrometer and a laser camera to search for organics and minerals that may have been altered due to an encounter with water. So hence possibly showing signs of microbial life that might have actually existed once on the Martian surface. Sherlock does this by taking samples and putting them under visible, near-infrared, and near-ultraviolet light, where it then measures and analyzes how the photons from the light in the different wavelengths respond to the collected samples. And from there, scientists are able to determine what elements are pretty much present on this rock or on the surface of Mars. And with the fluorescence spectroscopy instrument, ultraviolet lasers are used to excite electrons in carbon-based compounds, and if there's a presence of life on these samples, this experiment will cause the chemicals to glow, and this is known as a biosignature. So again, Sherlock is going to be using it's going to be photographing the Mars rocks that it studies, which is also going to allow for a science team to map the chemical signatures that it finds across the surface of Mars. This is going to be the first instrument that uses Raman and fluorescence spectroscopy on Mars. So here's actually an image of the oxygen plasma cleaner. So this is a device that is being used to actually clean off the surface of the Martian meteorite, clearing it of all organics that are found on the outside of the surface before we send it back to Mars. This specific meteorite was chosen because of it has really rough features to it, and it was actually able to be sliced without flaking, and it's strong enough to survive the high vibrations during takeoff and also space flight, and then eventually landing and the Mars rover rolling around on the surface. So no, this isn't the first time though that a Martian meteorite actually went back to Mars. In 1999, aboard the Mars Global Surveyor Zagami, a meteorite retrieved from Nigeria in 1962 went back to Mars, but it never actually went on the surface. So this is actually in orbit right now around the planet still to this day. So the SAU-008 meteorite, which is going to be going on the Mars 2020 rover, will be the first meteorite to actually touch the surface of Mars since it actually had come from Mars and crash landed on our planet. Lastly, the Mars 2020 rover will have on board a lot of advanced materials for testing exposure to radiation and weather on Mars. And if these materials survive and react really well to these conditions, then NASA will be able to turn them into manufacturing spacesuits, gloves, and helmets for future astronaut missions. So this is going to be really, really cool. I think that's the most exciting component. I was trying to do a lot of research to find out what the advanced materials were, but it's kind of hard for me to. I actually ended up not finding anything. I don't know if they're just not releasing what type of materials. Right. But if we definitely have materials on this Mars rover and it survives the conditions, and that'll be my first outfit when I go to Mars. I think it'd be great.
That's so awesome. Yes.
All I can think of though with this story is that the rover is going to plop down and just be like, "Hey Mars, you dropped this."
Right. Yeah.
Plop the rock.
I was actually worried for a little bit that when it came through our atmosphere, the very first picture of it, the scientist was wearing a purple glove and it was reflecting a lot of the purple on the meteorite itself. And I was like, wait, is it purple? Like, I got a little concerned that, like, our atmosphere changed the color so much of it that when it goes back, it's going to be like, its friends won't like it anymore. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's going to be a weird, like, purple. You're not from here. Yeah.
Well, that's why I think it went through the Ox plasma cleaner, because they wanted to just eliminate all other organisms that it actually was put on it from Earth.
Totally. The other thing that I did want to point out really quickly is that Sherlock clearly is a backronym, as TARS so succinctly states for us. Backronym, bureaucracy, administrative creation, knowing retroactively, obviously naming your mission, which is in itself obviously a backronym. Backronym just being that, you know, they wanted to call it something cool. They came up with Sherlock, and then they, like, made all of the things fit Sherlock. Miss Athena hasn't been with us very long, is not familiar with backronym, and so now we are explaining it for everybody.
That's, like, really cool.
Yeah, as soon as you said Sherlock, I was like, that's a backronym. Right? Totally. Totally. Oh, that's awesome. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to take a little bit of a calendar break. I think there's more than one of those this week. And you're going to get to see, again, some of the things that Mike will be talking about next week. And when we come back, Jared will be having a fantastic interview with one Dr. Alan Stern. Stay with us. There's more tomorrow coming right up.
Look into her face, determination in her eyes. She won't give up or quit or fall for little fashion lies. Filled with some expectation. This girl's a look into her face, determination in her eyes. She won't give up or quit or fall for little fashion lies. Filled with some expectation. This girl's a fascination. And nothing in her way will keep her from her destination. 'Cause she's fire walking. She's fire walking. When it's hot, she keeps on moving. The heat keeps on improving. Yeah, she's fire walking. She's fire walking to be free. Look into her face, determination in her eyes. She won't give up or quit or fall for little fashion lies. Filled with awesome expectation. This girl's a fascination. And nothing in her way will keep her from her destination.
Wow, I don't know what's going on with that. All kinds of audio issues with that commercial.
Oh, that's
You can definitely tell which of my hands is the dominant hand. So,
I just did my nails yesterday, and I haven't done them in like 2 months. I like kind of gave up, and I was like, oh, sparkles.
yeah, I think the next I'm gonna buy a color that looks like titanium when you burn it, where it gets that like blue with the orange and red on the edge. So I'm gonna try to get that.
Oh, you can layer too. So like, well, we'll go over that in After Dark. But
Sorry.
I layered this with these two colors,
Gotcha.
right? So you can have a similar.
Like sort of a mix.
Yeah, you can do like a
That's cool.
solid orange on the bottom with a more iridescent, blue on top. And,
Yeah,
and
because
get
that's
that kind of
I'm trying
idea.
to. I want to have like, you know, something that looks like flight hardware when I go to Yuri's night. So that's the plan.
Cool.
Yeah, talk
now
about the
you-
formaldehyde in it. Yeah, so formaldehyde.
Yeah, I'm just gonna do some hydrazine on my nails real quick. So, you know, no big.
I'm doing comments on this.
Yeah, you come up on camera one and you're introducing comments. I'll do citizen slates. Not
That's what I'm trying to figure out.
one,
Camera one.
and the TV's flickering. You can't go too far.
Unsymmetric dimethylhydrazine.
Yeah, I'm glad you can say that because I can't.
Just barely, by the way.
Wait, where is this word written?
Hydrazine. Oh, don't joke about earthquake. Not here, at least. So, no earthquake jokes here.
Somebody tell Ben the TV's flickering.
TV's flickering, Ben.
Not much I can do at this point. I noticed that, and I tried to fix it.
New show tomorrow
fashion
fashion.
and
Oh my God, we
gossip.
just saved
Tomorrow gossip.
Here we go. Here we go.
Rod Cliff.
Here we go.
Oh my gosh, please, yes. Can we do that?
We talk about space celebrities as if it was like a regular celebrity show.
Can we do that? Yo.
Am I gonna
Oh
have
my
to?
gosh, and did you see what Peggy Whitson was wearing the other day?
Like, seriously.
Oh my gosh, and Chris...
Reel it in, folks. Reel it in. We're trying to start a show.
His mustache is a beast.
Jared, jeez. Chris Radcliffe is in trouble for setting you off into Pugville.
And welcome to the third segment. I am Carrie Ann, and I will be your host for this as well. Hopefully you enjoyed that that fantastic interview. And for sure, I want to make sure I give a huge thank you again to our citizens who support us here on the show. These people are the Escape Velocity citizens. They have given us $10 or more on Patreon or $30 or more per month on makersupport.com. And then we have our Orbital citizens. I'm sorry, I scrolled right past them. They have $5 or more per episode on Patreon or $15 a month on Makersupport, and we also have our suborbital citizens. They have given us $2.50 or more per episode on Patreon, or $5 or more a month on Makersupport.com. They, of course, also get their name in the third segment of the show. They get access to our citizen-only hangouts, early access to After Dark, and honestly, even more than that. If you are excited to become a citizen of tomorrow, please head on over to patreon.com/TMRO or makersupport.com/TMRO. Okay, so last week we had a lovely, lively discussion about the NASA 2019 proposed budget, right?
Yes. If you ain't talking money, I don't want to talk.
Right.
So, that's
right.
the way it works. So.
which strangely, we had no comments for.
Really?
No, nobody believes me when I say that. Yeah, everyone had lots of things to say. So I just figured, there was going to be one week where everyone's going to be like, yeah, we're not talking about that now. All right, cool. But that is not this week. We had plenty of people saying all kinds of things. So first up, we have from YouTube, one Frank Mueller says, I want NASA to do that which the private market can't or won't. Colonization of space, like those long ago regions of Earth, will never happen until they are economically viable in and of themselves. Creation of such a station would light a fire under planetary resources and deep space industries to get to mining asteroids to fuel to feed such a station. And once they do, more companies will want such orbital stations for their projects and industries, like pharmaceuticals, and then move into Lagrange points as well. Or two, he says, I suppose. That's the future I won't be here to see, but I wish I could be. Frank, I mean, we're all getting older. I'm not going to say that maybe you're 100 or plus, and so maybe you won't be able to see that. But assuming you're not 100 plus, you very well might, honestly.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of these companies, such as Planetary Resources and Deep Space Industries, I keep saying DSI in my head, are probably plodding along just fine, without us, and are doing kind of a lot like Blue Origin does, right? Like, does a whole bunch of stuff and then goes, hey, surprise, we did things. I don't know if any of you can necessarily speak to that per se, but I feel like that's coming along much quicker than we thought. Mike, I can see you've got something you want to say, so go ahead, jump in. No, it's good.
I feel like both of those companies already have plenty of motivation and a fire lit under them to accomplish that. I feel like what Frank is talking about, if that type of thing would happen, would light a fire under the people who would invest in those companies. Because unfortunately, the fire is burning bright and burning up all their cash. So
right?
Yeah. Right. I kind of agree with Frank on the idea that NASA should be doing the things that industry currently isn't doing. I really want NASA to sort of get back to sort of the fundamentals, the bread and butter, kind of like almost like the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics did early on in aviation and other things like that. NACA developed airfoils, cowlings, other things that they then handed to industry and said, "Go nuts, have fun with this." And they were, hugely instrumental in helping develop aircraft into where they are now. And of course, NACA ended up getting turned turned into NASA, and they still continue to do that. I'll bet with the astronautics component involved in it there, and it would be really cool to see them get back to that, as opposed to burning large piles of cash on leaning launch towers and stuff like that. So
Yeah, 100%.
yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that as far as just the statement alone saying that to have NASA do something that the private market can't or won't, I understand that difference. I think that what's great right now is the fact that, like we said, SpaceX and NASA are actually like now partnering together for science missions, which is huge. So I think that for them to work together is something really important, because either way, anytime if, say, the federal budget's going to be going down in certain regions, it can just now potentially these private markets can actually increase, in their areas, or like they'll just instead put more focus on like the science missions if that's being a decrease in NASA and the federal budget, like federal agencies or government agencies. So I think to have, it's kind of like saying keep everyone in their own place, but I think that maybe for certain departments that's good, but I think overall it's still really good to have that overall collaboration, because that's what we do worldwide anyway. So why would we do it any different versus a government versus like a private institution? So that's kind of just my thoughts on that comment.
Yeah. Get back to the cutting edge.
Yeah.
Make it the bleeding edge.
The bleeding.
Do the cool stuff. So I guess that's how I would say it,
I mean, I feel like we all sort of agree there. So right, exactly.
Yeah.
Awesome. Next comment comes off of YouTube as well. This one is from Christopher. Good solid name that I can pronounce. I appreciate that sometimes. Says, best show ever. Yes, budget for NASA is failing to wayside, but little. Is failing to wayside little, but SpaceX stock just increased by 100%. Falcon Heavy is going to be huge. I hope there was a pun intended there. All eyes on SpaceX, and hopefully Bigelow Aerospace are talking and coming up with ideas with inflatable habitation. Athena is Jewel, really intelligent and pretty fantastic addition to tomorrow's space team. Thank you. And we miss you here in Minnesota. Hoping to run into you guys someday. It would be huge for me, at least. Aw, thank you.
That was such a nice comment.
Praise
from YouTube.
Praise.
Yes, I totally agree. Athena is a great addition to the show. Again, primarily from science, but hanging out here with us on space.
Why not?
Good. Space is, right? Space is science. Science is space. Same
exactly.
Thing, but, wait, NASA budget is... wait, I have to reread the comment now. I think Falcon Heavy is going to be really huge. I think that's going to be really good. And I think... I was hearing about this about stock increasing, and... well, we don't think it's cryptocurrency, but a lot was increasing with that also, which is pretty cool. But I think it's still really important, obviously, to have that strong foundation of NASA, just because SpaceX, obviously, it's becoming so much more broader, where a lot of people are becoming familiar with the name, especially after with obviously the last launch, but the Falcon Heavy launch. But I think that still having that, the NASA name is huge. With the country.
Yeah, I feel like we're not quite at that point, like Alan Stern was talking about with the Hudson Bay Company and other groups during that time period, that we're actually doing exploration in addition to colonization as private enterprise. I don't feel like we're at that point yet, but I feel like we will eventually get to that point. So for now, NASA's super important in that it does concentrate, especially on robotic missions and astrophysics and planetary sciences, on stuff that private companies really aren't particularly interested in at the moment. Now, like Deep Space Industries and other groups, they're definitely trying to get as much asteroid data as they can. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see like a private asteroid observation mission come up in the next 5 years, which would be great, because not only would those companies get the data, hopefully the companies would be willing to send that data to NASA as well, and then everybody kind of wins. And that's kind of one of the really nice things about private-public partnerships, is that everybody kind of wins with that. The company gets what they need out of it, and then the civil side of that also gets what they need out of it as well. So there's really no losers in a public-private partnership in terms of space exploration. So
Yeah, very cool. As Chris Radcliffe in the chat room says, space is everything, as we heard earlier.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Good loop back. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes.
Next comment also comes off of YouTube from one generic fake name. We're just going to go with that. Says, I have a good feeling that the future of space will be great with private companies getting more involved. SpaceX made a test launch of a beefy cargo ship as exciting as the first humans to walk on the moon. NASA's infamous for making things boring, and a lack of public interest killed NASA's Mars plans in the 70s. I think the private industry might solve the public relations problem the space industry has had up until now. I think we sort of linked about it or talked about it a little bit earlier. Space is boring. And to a certain extent, there's, for those of you who've been watching the show for quite a while, if you go back to season 3, episode 8, I found out, we interviewed a really lovely human being, Andy Cochran, and he did, at the very first Space Up in San Diego, he did this, what we did a T-5 talk, sort of just a quick talk, and his was labeled Space is boring. And going into, again, sort of seeing the title and making a judgment call, seeing that title, I was like, who is this guy? And what is he talking about? And I don't understand, because I love space, and everyone should too, and how dare you say space is boring? And but he made a lovely point that was extremely poignant, for lack of a better word. He put some astronauts up on screen, and he said, I bet these people have names. And I realized, I know, like, that one, and I know this person, and I don't know all of them, and why don't I know all of them, and all of that sort of thing. So I don't know that space necessarily has a public relations. I don't know that NASA has to have that kind of public relations part of it. I love it. I love the NASA socials. I love the NASA tweet-ups as they were back in the day. Thank you, Chris Radcliffe, for putting that in the chat room. I feel like they're getting better, but I don't feel like they need to have it. Does that make sense? Yeah.
I feel like science in general has a PR problem.
Yeah.
There's a huge gap between interaction of scientists and public, and that's a huge problem in not just the spaceflight industry, but everywhere. And that's, I mean, we could do like an entire, we might even do a Tomorrow Science show.
Yeah, we might do an entire show about it, you guys.
So maybe that's a future topic that we can talk about.
Totally.
So there's just, we really need to step up the game, and I feel like we'll talk about that on the eventual Tomorrow Science episode about that, I suppose.
I think, Athena, you're perfectly suited to speak to that, I suppose.
Well, for me, I feel like it all stems from childhood, and I think that that's where it starts, and then it just sort of evolves from there. And it's with especially the science PR, what you were saying, like that needs to be better. You look at childhood, and you're in school, and that's where I guess the diversion begins of like where you're going to be going for the next 10 years, as far as like your interests and stuff. And very few people, I think, will actually explore multiple realms. But a lot of times you tend to be put into one, whatever your parents are doing, what your friends are doing, whatever it is. And I think that just through repeated history, we tend to like kind of keep each of those subcategories to themselves. And so with those that are really good at marketing and they're really good at business, they go into business marketing for products, they're different. But those are really good at science, really good at space. They see the bigger picture of science and space. They're not so worried about the whole marketing side. And I think that that's why what we're doing is important, why a lot of other people are doing is important, which is actually doing the outreach, because it is bringing like what everything is around us to actually making people realize just how important it is. And like I said, I think that that's why I'm so happy about the fact that there are so many STEM programs that I'm really hoping is going to not be canceled in the proposed budget. And I hope it actually will go forward, because that's where it stems. That's where the root is. Like we can all, be happy and dandy and be like, adults and talking about wanting to actually pursue science. And a lot of us who are doing it, and that's great. And we're making big differences. But the ones that are really going to cause a huge shift in humanity are going to be the young ones to actually say, wow, I know that person, this astronaut, and say, okay, now what do I do? How do I get into this? So like I never really saw like ads for like what was it, the science fairs in school. I saw ads for the cheerleading squad. Well, actually, my school didn't have a cheerleading squad, but like generic school did, where they had auditions for those things. There was ads everywhere about like being this class president, but there wasn't a lot about like the science club and all these other things. I didn't even know about these. I didn't even know my high school had a planetarium until I actually started going to the school. They didn't advertise that in the high school book. They didn't say, oh, Edward R. Murrow has a planetarium. No, it didn't say that. It said like, oh, department, all these other things, which is cool. But they don't advertise, I think, a lot of these things unless it's like a high-end tech school. But so, Tangent.
No, that's
it's good.
yeah.
I feel like
Add on to that a little bit too. I feel like NASA, with the whole education office, is really good about reaching out to elementary schools and inspiring elementary kids and stuff like that. I'm sure we all kind of have similar stories of getting inspired about space and then eventually falling out of it. I wish that they would continue that same sort of outreach that they do with elementary schools in middle school and in high school and even in college. And yes, they have all these scholarships and stuff like that, and the whole budget that we talked about last week, we'll decide whether or not that will continue in the next year or not. But, I wish that it continued. Yes, it's great. We got to inspire the younger generation, but we got to keep them inspired too, because,
Yeah, I feel like overall education kind of needs an update, because the last major overhaul in education happened in the 17th century. So we're kind of running on a very old system, and I feel like we kind of need to update some things. And in addition to that, I feel like, especially in STEM, there's a huge sort of casting asunder of arts and humanities that is very disadvantageous to the people going through STEM. It's always like, I always see people on Twitter dunking on arts majors, and it's like, that's not really a great way to do it, because these same people will also lament, oh my gosh, what happened to our critical thinking skills? I'm like, what does arts and humanities teach you? Sure, science teaches you that too, but arts and humanities teaches it from different perspectives, and that really helps out. So I feel like there's, especially in a communication aspect, arts and humanities really meshes well with science in terms of communication and outreach, and that's really, to me, what's missing, besides redo education from the foundation up and get it back together, because the 17th century system doesn't work well in the 21st century. So, we're not putting leeches on people and trying to bloodlet them out when they get the flu. I don't know, we might be in certain places, but,
oh my gosh.
But most of the time we're not. We're getting the flu shot and then staying at home and having chicken noodle soup and Gatorade. So, let's kind of update it a little bit. Let's also not forget art, because it's important. It really is.
It comes from having to be pushed into a decision making at a young age. I think that's a huge thing. It's like, oh, okay, well, what do you want to do? Well, I work in a business, so you got to do that too, son. And I think that's there's a big decision making being pushed on kids at a really young age, unless you go to an art school. So.
I will say that if you're interested in maybe getting a little bit involved, besides watching the show, which is fantastic and doing that, Miss Athena does have an amazing space pod coming out a little bit later on this week, where she speaks with, I'll let her go into that, but she does talk a little bit about Yuri's Night and a little bit of The Expanse and how all of those things come together. So look out for that a little bit later on this week. So the next comment also comes, oh no, not also, this one comes off of Reddit. See, we check all of the places you comment. This one comes from Casey Hoosier. Says, this proposal is insightful, as it shows what NASA and the President Trump want. But committee meetings, Senate proposals, House proposals, committee votes, budget negotiations, constituent feedback, PAC donations, and then final votes happen, and the final budget may be tweaked or may be completely changed. U.S. government budget proposals are so nebulous and frustrating. Oh, aren't they?
Nebulous.
Yeah, nebulous is such a perfect word for that.
Nebulous.
Yeah, it is difficult, especially, I would imagine, especially if you're outside of the United States, looking at how the government sometimes works in the United States. It's just like, huh? So, okay. So,
It is interesting to follow sometimes, though, and seeing the counteroffers that go back and forth between the House and the Senate and the different subcommittees and all that sort of stuff, and what the final compromise eventually is. And, a lot of stuff, like, I remember even just the year before, Trump wanted to also cancel the education office then, and the Senate and the House fought and were just like, no, we might lower the budget a little bit for that, but that needs to stay. So, anytime that there's a proposal like this, especially from the executive office, that kills a program that we might really like, it's never the end of it. It's always going to be a back and forth. So
yeah. So we'll see.
It's going to go for a while, I think. Until I think there's a deadline soon, but that's usually, like I said, like the Blitz is happening next week. Is there? Did you know the deadline? Oh, that's like.
Have we actually officially come up with the budget for this year that was supposed to be decided last October? Aren't we still like trying to figure that out? Aren't we on another continuing resolution?
I think the continuing resolutions will continue until there is a resolution.
So it's a mighty fine point there.
Yeah.
Also, really quickly, Mike, I want to point out, thank you for wearing a color, as the rest of us apparently did not get that memo this week.
Well, space is the
I
new
didn't
black.
realize that. Space is the new black.
You wear black, but you know.
The background, you'd be a floating head.
No, the blue is lovely on you.
Well, in terms of energy output and color temperature, Mike is winning.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, so good. All right. The final comment this week comes off of YouTube from one James E. Wagner Jr. Says, if a day on Mars is 24 hours and 40 minutes, you get to sleep an extra 40 minutes a day. That's so something to look forward to.
Right?
I'm on board with this.
And you know what's so cool about that is that the teams that operate out of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory here in Pasadena, Johnson Space Center's medical teams will actually hook them up. They'll wire them up with sensors all over them to measure everything you can think of biologically during those early months of the mission, because they don't run on Earth time. The people, the engineers and scientists, they actually run on Mars time. So they go into work 40 minutes later every day for the first couple of months of the mission, and they wire it up and they see, you know, who can handle that extra 40 minutes, who doesn't do so good with it. And it turns out people who are night owls do really great with that extra 40 minutes. But people who are like early morning risers, it just ruins their lives for several months. So I'm really looking forward to Mars because I'm a hardcore night owl. So like, this is going to be great. I can't wait. So, but overall, it does kind of ruin your body clock because it takes, they found it takes longer than those several months to actually get your body clock synced up with Mars.
Yeah,
so,
I'm sure it does.
It's some wild stuff. So.
That's crazy. I don't know how I'd react. I was thinking, I was like, oh, extra 40 minutes to work, and then I was like, wait, okay. But I guess you just spend that time sleeping.
Yeah.
Wow. Lisa Stojanowski in our chat room, off of YouTube chat room, says, can confirm I did not get extra sleep. I just feel like maybe you were just doing it wrong, Lisa. For those of you who don't know, Lisa is also one of our co-hosts on our Tomorrow Science channel and has done many a stint here on the Tomorrow Space channel. So, but that's good. Good to know. Yeah, I'm an early bird, so apparently I'm right out.
Same.
Yeah.
I don't think it would work right for me.
Good to know. Good to know. All right, so that's basically our show. I do want to make sure I give a thank you again to our citizen ground support people. These people will give us $1 or more per episode on Patreon, or $1 per month or more on makersupport.com. They also get their name in the show. You get access to exclusive citizen-only hangouts and early access to After Dark as soon as it's available on demand, and we appreciate every single one of you, so thank you for that. Next week, looks like we are going to have Max Haupt. I don't know how to pronounce that. I probably should have asked before I said it out loud. Who is the founder and CEO of Launcher? So that's really cool. That sounds like that's going to be a lot of fun. And then we're good, right? We're good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we're good.
That was good.
Awesome.
I'm looking forward to Yuri's night. So.
Oh, so excited. Can you put sparkles in your mohawk?
Oh,
please,
yes.
please.
Oh, yes. Wow. So I know we're going to be talking about it After Dark. Hopefully, if you are joining us live, you will get to hear the end of that conversation.
Yes.
And if not, it's going to be a little bit longer for you. But thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week.
Does it take for it to grow out?
I don't know, but
that's because of us clapping all the time, so you muted the thing.
No,
join us, Mike. Join us.
That was some sort of failure on the video part. I have no idea what happened.
Oh, CRISPR.
Oh, man.
I love CRISPR. CRISPR always cracks me up.
Oh, good.
You've got all these amazing,
Yes.
you've got this amazing gene editing technology. Why don't you use it to cure things?
Oh,
But I want to make
so
people
good.
dinosaurs.
I want to make people dinosaurs.
Yeah, I'll put sparkles in my mohawk. So I'm just, the week of Yuri's night, I'm just gonna, I don't care how long it is, I'm gonna go ahead and just put the pattern back because I'm so tired of generic white guy number 3 haircut. It's just like people don't look at me anymore, they don't care. They're just like, oh yeah, look at you, there's another guy, so.
Yeah, I don't
It's like
think
I always appreciated having a mohawk because
I don't think that happens.
Gets people's attention.
You're gigantic, and you're loud, and you never stop moving. Like
So?
people definitely look at you, man.
So?
It's a different kind of look, though, when you have like a mohawk.
Like people look at me not how would I describe it?
I don't know.
There's
Like,
just something
out of
about the mohawk
curiosity.
that makes
Yeah.
people like. I just like that kind of attention better than oh, you're tall and you're lanky and you don't dance well. You know, kind of, I mean that doesn't
my
stop
gosh,
me
I
from
can't wait to
dancing.
dance
I
at
was gonna
Yuri's
say that
night.
definitely
So,
doesn't
but, you
stop
know,
Jared at all.
We're going to have to do some like major moon dancing at
So-
Yuri's night. I'm excited.
That's hilarious.
A mohawk, since everybody's like, where's your mohawk? A mohawk is much like a phoenix. In order to renew it, you have to completely destroy it. So right after my trip in January, I decided to go ahead and we're going to just rebuild, let it grow back in thicker, you know, everything that you do. Because with the technique that you have to use to do a mohawk, you sometimes lose hair.
Yeah.
And as I'm getting older, I'm losing more hair. And I need to find a new technique, so...
I use this like spray bottle thing.
Man.
What is it?
What's up?
I was just saying, tell me about it. It's freaking depressing. I'm getting so many bald spots. It's awful.
I mean, I've had this hairline since like high school, but like, I don't know. So.
Do some like deep
My
scalp
hairline
massages.
used to be like right here. That's where my hairline used to be. And it's already gone back almost 2 inches. And I'm just like,
Does that happen to us too, or is it just like a normal thing?
I don't know. I got bangs.
So you're good.
Not sure. My hairline can be back here. I have no clue. I just keep pushing it forward anyway. Like I'm not.
I've honestly thought
Seems to be all right.
the chat room's talking a lot about me wearing a helmet or something. I've honestly like wondered if I did ever get to be an astronaut, if I actually would be allowed to keep my
Mohawk?
my mohawk or
They should
not.
like shape
So
the helmet to shape like a mohawk, so it just like encapsulates your mohawk.
that might
There
be
you go.
extra mass. So I don't know if we'll get away with that.
I want to make sure, Mike, that we are respectful of your time.
Yes.
Should we do your space pod as we've already done Athena's today?
yeah.
Yeah? All right.
Let's get this done.
Perfect. Dada, you are all set
Hello.
up for that, I imagine? Cool.
Can you hear this like ringing or like a loud noise
Yeah.
in my background?
Yes.
What is that?
Maybe we should wait just a little bit. Hang on just a second. Let me if I can get this asshole to shut up. Duty services here, and I told him I could come until 3 o'clock, and he freaking
After dark.
Welcome to After Dark,
That's so funny. I love it.
Not what I was expecting. Holy moly.
Man, that was great. Mike's gonna throw down. That's so funny.
Y'all think that I'm the one who
great.
swears.
That was pretty good. I'm a big fan of Angry Space Mike. That was
He's gonna come back bloody and messed up.
It was so. I was like, not. Yeah, I just was not expecting that at all.
Angry Space Mike. That should be like the next video game. Like Angry Birds.
Oh my gosh.
That was really funny.
Oh, he scares me.
that was
That was so good.
too much gamma
Wait,
radiation.
where is Mike?
He's handling that asshole. So,
No, he's right
it's back now. So, all right. Did you show that
in
asshole his
space.
boss?
I did.
That was amazing.
I told you not to do this at this freaking time. Go away for a little
I
bit.
can't believe you've done
That's
this.
amazing.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my
I
gosh.
found out earlier, but I didn't want to interrupt the comment section there. But it's just
No. It really was. It wasn't
fine.
that much, but on a space pod, it would be really annoying for sure. So, I believe Dead is all set. So whenever you're ready.
okay.
Okay. Hey everybody, this week I wanted to talk about some interesting news regarding Bigelow Aerospace and their new creation of a sister company called Bigelow Space Operations, which is going to handle all of the sales, operations, and customer service regarding all of the management of their Bigelow space stations that Bigelow Aerospace is going to be building. And there's some really interesting things that have been developing since this, so I want to talk about what all of this means for Bigelow. This is your Space Pod for Tuesday, January 27th, 2018.
February 27th.
What did I say? Didn't I say February 27th?
January.
Or did I say January?
You said January.
Damn it.
Try again.
Damn it.
All right, take it easy, Mike. Easy, easy, easy. Breathe, breathe.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This week I wanted to talk about some really interesting news regarding Bigelow Aerospace and the creation of a new sister company called Bigelow Space Operations, which is going to handle all of the sales, operations, and customer service regarding all of the management of the inflatable space stations that Bigelow Aerospace is building. So this week I wanted to talk about what all of this means and some of the exciting partnerships that have come up from it. This is your Space Pod for Tuesday, February 27th, 2018. The first task or goal of this new company is basically to quantify in detail the global, national, and corporate commercial space interest for these orbiting space stations. The subject has kind of had a lot of ambiguity for many years, and Bigelow Space Operations is going to be spending several millions of dollars this year to establish concrete answers and find out exactly who the interested customers are. This concerns me slightly, but let's move on to what exactly this company is going to be doing. Bigelow plans to launch one of two of the B330 space stations by the year 2021, the first of which will hopefully launch under the X-Space proposal to be attached first to the International Space Station. The module would stay at the International Space Station for hopefully many years and serve as a type of transition for all the different science and experiments done at the station after the ISS operations end, whenever that might be. But whenever the time would come, the B330 module would separate from the International Space Station and await the next B330 module to form the first commercial complex where microgravity research could still be conducted. Now, to help facilitate this goal, Bigelow Space Operations recently announced a partnership with the Center for the Advancement of Science in Space, or CASIS, which is the manager of the International Space Station, at least the U.S. National Laboratory side of it. So Bigelow Space Operations is now officially a user of the ISS National Lab, and it will be facilitating the different integration of payloads for commercial, academic, and government customers. So in this capacity, Bigelow Space Operations intends to contract with other payload integrating companies and to promote the services of the ISS National Lab, promote other payload facilitating companies, and to develop new relationships for the ISS and Bigelow Aerospace stations. And with a lot larger commercial platforms on the horizon, BSO recognizes that this is a really important step that they need to take of gaining experience at the ISS so they can move on to a lot of more of their bigger ambitions, especially considering the partnerships that they have with United Launch Alliance and Boeing and all of the different goals that they want to have of creating a very vibrant space economy, not just for science, but for tourism and mining and just developing a big space economy. All of these goals are moving forward in this really cool direction, and I'm really excited for this. And even just this partnership with CASIS is something that's really exciting and will probably yield a lot of really cool science in the future. So we're going to have to wait and see how things happen, but I'm excited that things are finally ramping up and getting serious for Bigelow Aerospace and what this could mean for the future. So hopefully this will bring space more accessible to everybody. In the meantime, though, be sure to check out our last week's show, Orbit 11.08, where we had a fantastic interview with Dr. Alan Stern. And be sure to check out our live show every Saturday at 1800 Coordinated Universal Time. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and if you can, support us on Patreon or Maker Support. And until the next time I see you, don't forget, Ad Astra, to the stars.
Thanks, Lawnmower Man.
Yeah. That's it. I'm firing this guy. He can't follow me.
Oh, dude, I'm so sorry.
Good job.
Should we do that ending again? Well, Not even sure if I'm able to. God.
There's no edit. There's no edit point there.
Ben Credible, what say you?
We can flash that image and then come back and do your close if you want. We can use edit. The last image is cover.
It was loud and obnoxious and a little bit hilarious.
I think it was only hilarious to the live audience, though. Like, I think it's a space pod.
Yeah, I understand. I think we'll just leave it in there as a bit of tomorrow lore, as it were.
Tomorrow lore.
Yeah, it's kind of you got to watch live. It's one of the benefits of watching live. You get to hear about the Mike's asshole. That's an awkward way.
Do you want to? Yeah, don't say you're not completely on air. Thankfully for that. Do you want to take the part from After Dark before he started and like bleep it out and put it at the end?
No.
Okay.
No. You have to watch live to get the whole
All right.
thing, or you have to be.
That's why you watch live.
or a patron or a citizen. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose if you're a citizen, then you know what's up.
Yep.
All right.
I think we're good. I think we'll leave it as is.
Sorry, guys.
No, Mike, you're totally fine.
It's like the world's shittiest Easter egg.
It's
Oh man.
Oh my God. Okay. Oh wow.
Yeah, I gotta.
Waver at all though, like.
No, you were great, Mike. There
you
was
just kept
nanoseconds
going.
worth of hesitation as you're going through everything. Oh, set aside for the 2018 gag reel. Yeah, no kidding. That's hilarious. All right, Mike. Whenever you need to go, you just say so. Or
Yeah.
Mike is gone because Ben broke the TV. So there's that.
I've already been unplugged. There's no signal,
I
guys.
know. Good gods.
Not even a goodbye.
That was a great space pod, Mike.
Hologram.
Almost like a pantsing for crying out loud.
Thanks. Well, good show today. Thank you, everyone. Good job, Jared, on the interview. Thank you, Athena, for stepping in and taking Jared's stories. Did a
Yeah,
great
totally.
job. This was a good show.
Awesome. Very cool.
Yeah, this is super good, and that was a great space pod, Mike. So
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
You guys are so much
Tried
fun.
my best.
Oh,
Thank you. It's funny, I've actually had quite a few people to tell me, like, will you stop shaking your head and talking with your hands and turning it up to 11? You need to be at like a 7. And I'm just like, no.
nah, dude.
No.
You do you, boo.
Yes.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm gonna get going though. But yeah, great show, everybody. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next week.
Yeah, have a great one, Mike.
See you later.
So, see ya.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Oh my goodness.
So Detta says, wait, did Ben just say that the world's shittiest Easter egg is Mike's asshole?
Yeah, I think so.
I like.
That's it.
There you go.
Graphics choose possibly 10 more pods than just 2. What?
Space pods.
You want like produce more pods?
Oh, like the Bigelow pods.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe.
Oh,
I don't know. That's my question. Oh wait. Can I?
Mike just left.
I know. But
Oh, please, not Tide Pods.
effing all of the things and the stuff and copy. Okay, and then I can freaking. You know, when we had Google Docs, it's a lot easier to do this.
Whoa. On air shade.
Saying, not saying, just saying. Like, saying. Not saying.
No.
Just saying. To myself.
It
At
warmed up in here.
Space Vidcast. Yeah, it is 67. It's so balmy.
I was gonna say, it determines on how you feel. Because you were the one with like the numb.
My nose is still a little cold, so
Yeah.
it may have warmed up in here a little bit.
Yeah. I really think we should do a fashion show.
Wrong fashion?
Yes. It's
Fashion. Fashion.
Fashion show.
Fashion.
What was Bill Nye the Science Guy wearing in the Nick Graham fashion show? He was wearing his Galaxy tuxedo. That's actually a thing too.
Nice.
It is a collection by Nick Graham, and it's all space stuff that Bill Nye wore.
Very nice.
It's really cool. But
All right, so I grabbed
Power the
that
plants.
to be put into the comments for next week,
Yeah, look at you go.
which again was easier when we had the Google Docs.
Yeah, that's neat. Cool.
Did you catch the part where we have to get a divorce because you want to go to space?
Oh, I've known that for
Yikes.
years.
Okay.
Years.
One of these reasons you'll actually grant me. You're not on camera. You can actually smile. They can't tell.
I think we're done.
See, the joke
Just
here
so-
is that Ben is a night owl and Carrie Ann is not. So if we were to go to Mars, one of us is SOL, and that's me. So I'm not doing it.
Just so you know, this is California. You don't need his permission to get a divorce. It just takes 6 months of waiting.
I kind of wow.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. I know. I've waited 17 years. He's going to grant me permission. Oh, goodness gracious.
Mommy and Daddy are fighting.
Hey,
What's going on?
so this
I'm just
question
in the
came up.
middle.
Oh.
Ooh.
We have shirts. We have long sleeved shirts.
Go get one.
Long sleeved shirts? May I have a long sleeved shirt?
What size are you?
I'm a 2X.
That would have been nice to bundle up.
I'm a 2X because I like pizza.
Yeah, they're only long sleeved, by the
I
way.
gotta get pizza.
That and they're still
Oops,
black,
sorry.
so it wouldn't have changed this situation
I know,
at all. It was funny because I looked over at Mike and I was like, "Man, that blue is really popping today," and I can't figure out why. And I'm like, "Oh, because we're all wearing black. That's why." Like,
I'm all about fitness. Fitness pizza in my mouth.
oh, goodness.
Pizza. Oh my gosh, the best pizza ever is like in New York. You guys have to come to New York. We have to do like a tomorrow New York trip.
That'd be cool.
Have you been to New York?
I spent a week in New York and it was really cool. So awesome!
Yes.
I look so good now.
Your new
Look
pizza
at me.
eating shirt.
Look at how nice I am.
Wait, now you have to just kind of like fabulous. Just like throw it over the shoulder. That's like Major Zoolander right there.
Lisa says, "Save her a small, please."
I will.
She's gonna need clothes when she comes back to the earth.
Nice. This is cool. It's got the logo and everything, and it's got nothing on the back, but it's got the
Nothing on
logo.
the back is long sleeved. It's got the logo.
Sleeved.
Right. We're doing some refreshes to some things online, which is why.
Right.
Because
Shoot.
the Shopify store is going away and getting replaced with something else soon. And so you'll see them when the store gets replaced, but I didn't want to go to all this work to update the Shopify store, only to shut it all back down and have to redo all the work. So once the new store comes up, then you'll be able to buy the shirts. I'll have short sleeved versions of that later, and then we may even do branded versions that have like the space and science logos. So you'll be able to buy the non-branded version for just general, and then something, and then I can't decide if we should do, we're going to do a new campaign. Can anyone hear? I'm just trying to speak loud.
Not sure if people can hear you.
Trying to do a new campaign.
You could just put on a mic.
I can hear you in the
slogan
control
is
room.
Let's
You're fine.
explore. So I might do that on the back, and I might or do the new campaign image on the back or something.
Nice.
Yeah, I believe we'll have worldwide ship. It'll still be worldwide.
Prestige worldwide.
Right. You may have to pay more for shipping unless you're a citizen that has free shipping.
Perfect.
Cool beans.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be cool.
Yep.
Awesome.
Nice.
Pizza's best from Italy.
Paul Nielsen off of YouTube. I don't know if that was directed at me or Ben. I'm assuming it was directed at Ben.
What's the comment?
No, I want to know for sure who Paul was talking to first. Thanks. The best pizza I've ever had actually was at Epcot.
Ooh. I really want pizza. I'm gonna get pizza later.
Yeah, I was gonna say Naples here in Anaheim.
Is the second best pizza I've ever had.
Yeah, but I haven't been to Epcot yet. So
The experimental prototype community of tomorrow, Jared. I expect you to go there.
I want to go.
That's tomorrow, then.
I really do. So it looks cool. We could like
Is
look
it
at
of
the
tomorrow
ball.
or is of TMRO?
Oh.
Does that mean we have to buy the park now?
So
Disney knows that. They license stuff, so we can totally do that.
Didn't you?
So, fun story.
Fun story, Ben. Like fun story. I was Just looking at the numbers the other day, and I think we are going to purchase.
We're gonna buy one Epcot. No. So, when we were Space Vidcast, for a very long time, we were trying to figure out. I knew for years that I wanted to change the name of the show, but we couldn't figure out what to change it to. And then I decided I wanted to change the name of the show to Project Tomorrow. And we were at Epcot when I realized I can't do that. Because those guys, Disney, owns the trademark to Project Tomorrow on Spaceship Earth. So I was like, damn it. Then that's where we started messing with the idea of like, okay, how do we get around to this? And it took us a while to come to TMRO, and a very long debate as to whether it would be TMRO or TMRW. I want a TMRW. Yep, everyone.
No, that doesn't go well. Doesn't flow good.
Nope.
But when you abbreviate tomorrow, shorthand it, it's TMRW.
And when you say tomorrow, it ends with an O.
Right, and that was the thing that convinced me.
English is a dumb language.
Because English is a dumb language. Anyhow.
Hey, did you know that in the English language, sometimes the letter C can sound like the letter K?
What the hell? Who thought this was a good idea?
Not to mention that my dad used to work for a company called TRW. And so TMRW just, I didn't like it.
I just like the shape of a W.
Yeah, I like the shape of a W as well.
And I have to admit, when Ben initially said that, I also, where I used to work, there was a TRW shop that I used to walk by every single day, and I would see this like compressor trailer or something that was marked with TRW. And when Ben said he wanted it TMRW, that picture came to mind, and I'm like, nope.
Yep. As Smokey Dirk points out, TMRW sounds like it should be pronounced TMRW. Sure does.
That sounds like a dog trying to say it.
Because when you say the thing is, I like the inverse of the M and the W. Like I do like the way that looks. I like the way that plays off of each other. All of that.
Some pretty cool things.
But the thing is, that if you're saying it, it's saying. And welcome to TMRW, TMRW. It's just it's not. If you can slur it together and it still sounds like the word you're trying to say, like I'm in.
Yeah.
Tomorrow.
I like tomorrow.
TMRO is like tomorrow.
And the other nice thing about TMRO is that it's every other letter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good stuff.
Ben can't say Google Lunar X Prize without sounding like he's drunk. We needed tomorrow.
That's what I'm saying. Precisely. Freaking fracking.
X Prize challenge.
Google Lunar X Prize, Northrop Grumman Super Motocross Off-Road.
As Chris Radcliff likes to say, just TMWO, and then it's fine.
And so it's running like
which is hilarious.
TMOW. What all these things?
I got that one, Smokey.
Pinecone Master off of YouTube asks, is it a backronym? It is not a backronym. It is really just a shortened, more elite version of saying tomorrow. We just took the extra letters out. TMRO doesn't stand for anything for us other than tomorrow.
I feel like
we should
it
find
needs to
words.
become a backronym.
No, it should not be a backronym.
Oh, okay. I was thinking we should try to get some words to go.
You know what?
It
No,
should
can I just appreciate this moment for a second? Somebody agreed with Ben, and then Carrie Ann said no, and then automatically she changed. She was like, oh, no, yeah, we shouldn't do that. Just kidding. Thank you for that, because I never get that validation on this show. Well, I don't know. I mean, there's something, for me, if the citizens of TMRO would like to make it a backronym, then yeah, go ahead and make it a backronym, I suppose. I like that it's not.
We had this discussion when we first changed,
Yeah.
and everybody said, wait, I thought you had a no acronym policy.
Yeah.
No, we do have a no acronym policy.
Right.
And we also had the argument over acronyms and initialisms.
Yep.
And so tomorrow is an initialism at the very best.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. See? You want to
done
fight
this
this
already.
again?
We've
No,
done this
it's not a
already.
backronym.
I know, but that's what I'm saying. It's not a backronym, and that's why I like it for not being a backronym. As we do have a no acronym policy.
No, Chris, no.
But we don't have a no backronym policy.
Sure.
Backronym is an acronym.
No, it's a backronym.
No, it's a backronym. It's an acronym.
Is backronym
It's still an acronym.
I think backronym is just a backronym.
Right, but it's still an acronym.
I still want it to stand for something. Other than
was
what it
like
stands for, like.
when people make acronyms for acronym.
No,
This moon's
Chris.
really orange.
Like a completely random order never yields meaning.
Tarantulas might radiate outward.
No.
Sick.
No.
But tarantulas are cool.
There you go.
Acronym.
I knew it was in there somewhere. I don't know. Anyway, anything else?
No, I think we're done.
All right. You're really done.
I'm really done.
Toast. Benny's toast.
I'm toast.
I can see that.
I didn't even do the show, and I'm just like, I'm out.
I know. Yeah. Must have had a late night or something last night.
Yeah, something.
Yeah.
Coming back next week?
Yeah.
All right, you're on for
Yeah.
news. You got the interview?
Okay, sure. I'll
right.
do some interview.
Cool. Is Max in studio?
He's in studio?
He's in studio.
Cool.
I was like, that's a weird last name.
Let's do it.
That's what I thought.
Like, no wonder why I couldn't pronounce that right.
There's a
background.
They're coming out of stealth mode, so it'll be really awesome. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Send... okay.
Cool.
All right. On that note,
Wow, you just watched Tomorrow
Awesome.
Happen.
So I'm doing the interview
Today.
next week
Ah,
and also hosting
no.
Tomorrow Science as well.
yeah, it sounds like
Sick. I'm on double duty next week.
you're both on double duty.
Oh, right. I was going to ask about that. Okay.
Dang.
Yeah.
Welcome
So,
to the
but
club.
Yeah.
so,
I'm for it.
if it's all right, I'd like to keep you on news, but next week you will have to build your own news.
Oh, yeah.
Is that all right?
Yeah, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, the only reason I grabbed those was just because they were already there.
No, that's fine. It's fine. So you'll grab news for both science and for space.
Okay.
Do you want me to do news for space as well, or I mean science?
No, you.
I'm kind of like
No, you're me on
Carrie
science.
Ann on
Gotcha.
science. You're
Okay.
going to be our.
Cool. I'm the play-by-play.
Ha!
Wait,
I'm
so confused.
I'm the decider.
You're you on both. On
I'm the
both
captain
me?
now.
You're you on both.
So-
Yes,
But
finally.
he's-
Up until now, science hasn't had a Carrie Ann to
Right.
like just push things around and make the show go.
That's my job.
That is now Jared's job.
Okay.
Sick.
Because that person has to be in studio, and we try to do that with Lisa, but you just
It's just
can't
so much
do it
harder that
remotely.
way.
Right.
It's near impossible.
Yeah.
But with
Yeah.
Jared here in studio, we'll be able to do it. So
Cool.
He'll act. He won't have any news stories, but he will. Do we have a roundtable discussion? You're responsible for questions for space. I'll give you as much data as I can.
Okay.
And then, and
I'll
get you in
talk to the
contact
guy
with,
too, so-
Max as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you're also responsible for coming up with the roundtable for stuff and stuff. And I get you basically permanently for space if I want.
Yeah.
Great. So these can become fairly permanent roles then? Question mark. Are you okay with that?
Sure, I don't have a problem with
Exclamation
it.
point.
So as long as
You are
you're cool
now-
with it.
I am.
So-
You are now always in charge of making sure we have a topic for space.
That's amazing. I
Either
love it.
roundtable or a
Oh.
guest.
Okay.
Is that really okay?
Sure.
That's
yeah.
exactly
Well,
that's what you said yes to, just so
guess
you
what?
know.
We're gonna have them by Wednesday now. So unless something like earth shattering, because that's what I've always wanted, is stuff like way ahead of schedule. So
That's fine. You can do whatever you want.
okay.
It's yours. I'm giving you.
So does this mean I have to go grab people to interview and stuff too? Or?
It would help if you have people.
Okay.
I will help do that. Everyone is responsible for that. So Dutta grabs people when he can. Kat does. I do. But yeah, the more people we can bring on, the better.
I
Okay,
have a
cool.
guest that worked actually with Alan Stern.
Great. Done.
And he was texting me during the show, and I was like, ah!
Yeah, bring them on.
Okay.
I think I
Bring
should
'em on.
just.
I can help coordinate that. I will give everyone the power. Like we have a living calendar that they can just sign up to, and it will be, that shows all the available show dates.
Oh,
We've got
sweet.
one for science and one for space. It's like just pick the one you want.
And you're not restricted.
And then off you go.
You're not restricted to the show that you're on. If you have somebody that you want to put on space, or put on somebody you want to put on science, you're more than
Yeah. Awesome. Cool.
For now, just CC me, and I'll give them the FAQ and the calendar.
Okay.
Kind of guide you through it. But then once you see, it's somewhat formulaic of like my responses are almost always the same because the guests always have the same questions. They're all legit questions, but it's always like when, where, how, what, and why.
Yeah.
So I don't know. So once you learn those answers, you can just do it without. I mean, you can just feel free to just make it go for both science and for space.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Cool. Yeah.
Nice.
Prove everyone.
Yeah, I got
so,
I got a friend who does a podcast, but she's also very much like advocacy for women in STEM.
Okay.
So I think that'd be cool to come on talk about
Absolutely.
that. So
Let's do it.
Yeah. Awesome.
yeah, neat.
Sweet.
So
Oh my gosh, someone wrote technology, media, rockets into orbit.
technology.
TMRO. I like that. I'll highlight it.
Whoops, that's not what I wanted. That's not what I wanted.
What do I want?
That's not what I
Tell
wanted.
Mike Rage on.
How many times I have done that?
Thanks, Tickle Stiff. That's great. Just listen to everything I do. I'm all sorts of awesome. My name at Starbucks now is okay, Mike reached out.
It's true.
True, too. He did. That's like topical and everything.
Sincerely, I don't think I've seen Mike in that mode ever before.
That was great.
And it was instantaneous.
Yeah, he was like,
it was like,
whoever
can you
that
guys
was.
hear that? You hear that? Because you're this! Like, oh my God, what just happened?
I'm gonna go tell that asshole to stop.
Yeah,
Oh my God,
where
Mike.
is he in California?
No, he's in Arizona. That's why he Skypes in. He's too
Okay.
far away.
Got it.
Yeah.
That was so Brooklyn. That's why I was like, is he like in New York? What is happening?
Just straight thrown
That
out
was
on
so
that.
funny. That was so good.
Amazing.
That was G. That was good. OG. Right there. Awesome.
times.
All right, are we done?
Sure, you're the boss, man.
I'm the boss man. Oh no, my. Oh.